Welcome back to the quiet apothecary. Take a slow breath, settle into where you are, and let the shoulders soften a little. There is no hurry tonight, and nothing here that asks anything of you. Tonight we stand together before a tall old cabinet of small wooden drawers, each one holding a spice, and each spice, once a medicine. It is a great dark cabinet of waxed oak, reaching almost to the low beams of the ceiling, and it is made of 100 small drawers, each with a worn brass pull, each labeled in a faded hand that only the master of the place can still read. The lowest drawers are within easy reach of any apprentice, for they hold the plain and common things, the salt and the mustard and the everyday pepper that any cook in the town would know. The middle drawers hold the warm brown seeds and the costly barks that came by long roads from the far edges of the known world. And the highest drawers, the ones reached only by the old cedar step, hold the rarest things of all, the golden threads and the strange grey lumps, and the resins worth more than their weight in silver, kept behind a small brass lock that the apothecary alone may open. We are going to open them slowly, one by one, all 100 of them, from the lowest and plainest to the highest and dearest. We will take each in its own quiet turn. For each, I will tell you a little of what it is, and where in the wide world it first came from, and the ailment it was kept to ease, and the gentle way it was prepared by candlelight, and then one small quiet thing, very often the smell of it, the thing you would notice if you leaned close and breathed it in. That is all we need to do tonight. Open a drawer, breathe, and close it again. Open the next, breathe, and close it again. Slow and even, like a soft rain settling on an old slate roof. So draw your blanket a little higher, and let the room grow dim, and let me reach down now to the very lowest drawer of all, the one nearest the floor, the one the cook visits 100 times a day. The first drawer holds salt. It seems almost too plain a thing to call a medicine, and yet salt was the first and the most necessary of all the things kept in any cupboard. For without it no meat could be saved through the winter, and no body could go on living for long. It comes from two great sources, the white salt boiled from the brine of the sea along the warm southern coasts, and the rock salt cut in dim glittering galleries deep beneath the earth in the old mines of Central Europe, where men carried it up by lamplight in great grey blocks. In the apothecary, salt was kept dry in a stoneware jar with a tight wooden lid, for it loved to draw the damp out of the very air. It was used in a great many quiet ways. A warm gargle of salt water was the first and surest remedy for the sore and swollen throat drawn down through the cold months. A bath of warm salt water was given to soak the aching feet of one who had walked far on the hard roads. A simple paste of fine salt was rubbed gently along the gums to ease a sore tooth, and a pinch of it was stirred into warm water and given to those who had grown weak and faint and dry after a long fever, for the old healers knew, without quite knowing why, that the body which has lost too much water also loses something in the salt, and must have a little of both put gently back. The quiet thing to notice about salt is that it has almost no smell at all, only the faintest clean breath of the sea, and yet when you taste a single grain upon the tip of the tongue, the whole body seems to wake a little, as though remembering something very old. Let us slide that drawer shut and open the second. The second drawer holds vinegar, the sour aromatic of the cupboard. It is not a spice in the way the seeds and barks are, and yet no apothecary could work without it, for vinegar was the great dissolver, the keeper, and the cleanser of the old still room. It is made when wine or cider or ale is left open to the air and grows sour over many slow weeks, until the sweetness has all turned to a sharp clear acid that bites at the back of the nose. In the apothecary, vinegar was kept in dark glass and earthen crocks, often steeped with herbs and spices to make the famous sharp waters of the old books. A vinegar of roses, made by laying fresh rose petals in good wine vinegar and leaving them in the sun, was dabbed upon the hot brow of one burning with fever, and the cool sharp scent of it was said to clear the heavy head. A vinegar steeped with garlic and rue and wormwood was the famous Four Thieves vinegar of the plague years, which the old story says was used by robbers to walk unharmed among the dying, breathing through a cloth soaked in it. A spoonful of honey and vinegar in warm water, the old oxymel, was given for the stubborn winter cough that would not loosen. The quiet thing to notice is the way the sharp scent of good vinegar seems to cut straight through a stuffed and heavy head, so that for a moment, leaning over the open crock, you can breathe clearly again, and that small clearness was itself reckoned a kind of medicine. Let us close that one too, and reach for the third. The third drawer holds garlic. Here the plain and humble grows truly powerful, for garlic has been counted among the great medicines of the common people for longer than almost anything else in this whole cabinet. It is the small white bulb of cloves, grown in every kitchen garden from the warm coasts of the south to the cold fields of the north, and it carries a pungent, oily, biting smell that clings to the fingers and the breath for hours after it is crushed. The builders of the great pyramids of Egypt were given garlic in their rations to keep up their strength, and the soldiers of Rome ate it before battle, believing it lent them courage and kept off sickness on the long campaigns. In the apothecary, garlic was kept simply. The dried bulbs hung in plaited ropes from a low beam near the door. It was used above all for the chest and the blood. A clove or two, crushed and swallowed with a little honey, was the country remedy for the deep, settled cough and the wheezing breath of winter. A poultice of crushed garlic, wrapped first in a thin cloth so that it would not blister the skin, was laid upon the sole of the foot of a child fighting a fever, an old trick whose reason no one could quite explain, but which the mothers swore by. In the great plague years, men ate raw garlic by the handful and hung it about their necks, and whether it helped them or not, those who could bear the smell of it at least kept a little distance between themselves and the sick. The quiet thing to notice about garlic is that for all its sharp and warlike strength, it grows from the gentlest of beginnings, a single small clove pressed into the autumn earth, sleeping all winter under the frost, and rising green in the spring without any tending at all. Let us slide that drawer closed, and draw open the fourth. The fourth drawer holds the onion, the close cousin of the garlic, and the steady friend of every poor kitchen. It is the layered bulb that all the world knows, grown everywhere, stored in cool dry lofts through the long winters, and brought down by the basketful for the daily pot. To cut it is to feel the eyes sting and the tears rise, for the onion carries a sharp volatile breath that the old healers thought a sign of its power to open and to move the humours of the body. In the apothecary and the cottage alike, The onion was a remedy for the chest and the ear and the slow healing wound. A roasted onion, soft and warm, split in half and bound against the ear, was the gentle country cure for the deep aching earache of a child on a cold night. The syrup of onion and honey, made by hollowing a raw onion, filling the hollow with honey, and leaving it overnight to draw out a sweet and pungent juice, was spooned out for the croup and the stubborn cough. A poultice of roasted onion was laid warm upon a swelling or a chilblain to draw out the cold and quicken the slow blood. The quiet thing to notice is how the same onion that makes us weep in the cutting becomes, when slowly roasted in the embers, soft and sweet and golden and kind, the sharpness all cooked away into a gentle warmth, as though the plant kept its medicine for the kitchen and its tears for the knife. Let us close that drawer and open the fifth. The fifth drawer holds mustard seed. These are the tiny round seeds, some pale gold, some near to black, of the mustard plant that grows tall and yellow, flowered across the open fields of summer, so that whole hillsides seem washed in gold when it is in bloom. The seed itself has almost no scent at all when it is dry and whole, and there lies its quiet secret. For the heat of mustard only wakes when the crushed seed meets a little water, and then, slowly, a sharp and pungent fire rises that can clear the head and bring the blood up warm beneath the skin. In the apothecary, mustard seed was kept in a small jar on the lower shelf, ground fresh as it was needed. Its great use was the mustard plaster, a paste of ground seed and warm water spread upon a cloth and laid against the chest of one whose breath rattled and whose lungs were heavy with a deep winter cold. The warmth would rise and redden the skin, and the old healers believed it drew the congestion up and out and quickened the sluggish blood beneath. A warm mustard bath for the feet was given to one chilled to the bone after a journey in the snow, to bring the warmth back into the cold limbs and to head off the fever before it could settle. A little mustard in warm water was even given, very carefully, to bring up the stomach of one who had swallowed something foul. The quiet thing to notice is how patient the seed is, holding its fire entirely hidden until the moment it is crushed and wetted. The way some quiet people keep their strength folded away until the very hour it is needed. Let us close that drawer and reach for the sixth, where we meet at last the king of the common spices. The sixth drawer holds the everyday black pepper, the common pepper of every table. It is the small dried berry of a climbing vine of the hot, wet forests of the Malabar coast of southern India, picked while still green and dried in the sun, until it wrinkles and blackens into the hard round corns we all know. For a great part of the Middle Ages, pepper was the most traded and most desired spice in all of Europe, carried thousands of miles by ship and by camel and by mule. And so it was money as much as medicine, weighed out on small scales, and a man of wealth might keep his peppercorns under lock. Yet by the close of the medieval centuries it had grown common enough to sit in the lowest drawers, and so we meet it here. The smell of it, freshly cracked, is warm and sharp and woody, and it makes the nose tingle and the eye water if you breathe it too deep. In the apothecary, pepper was the great warming spice, given to those whose digestion had grown cold and slow. For the old physicians taught that a cold stomach could not properly cook its food, and that a few grains of warm pepper would light the inner fire again. A pinch of ground pepper in warm wine was given for the chill that comes before a fever, and for the dull, cold ache of the joints in the wet months. It was rubbed, mixed with honey, on the slow, healing sore. The quiet thing to notice about pepper is the long, long road that each small black corn traveled to reach a cold northern kitchen, across oceans it would never see again, through the hands of 100 merchants, until at last it was ground over a bowl of pottage, by someone who had never in their life seen the green vine on which it grew. Let us close the 6th drawer and open the 7th. The 7th drawer holds the bay leaf, the leaf of the laurel. It is the stiff, glossy, dark green leaf of the laurel tree of the warm Mediterranean shores, the same noble tree whose branches were woven into crowns for the victors of old, for poets and for generals alike. The leaf, when fresh, is faintly bitter, but as it dries it gives up a deep, warm, balsamic scent, a little like resin, and a little like the sea wind in a pine wood, that keeps for a year or more in a stoppered jar. In the apothecary, bay leaves were dried slowly in the shade, for too much sun would burn away their virtue, and then kept whole on the middle shelf. A simple infusion of a torn leaf or two in hot water was given to settle a heavy stomach after a rich and greasy meal, and to ease the slow griping wind that troubles the elderly in the night. A few leaves boiled in oil made a warming rub for stiff and aching joints. The berries, darker and stronger than the leaves, were pressed for an oil that was rubbed upon sprains and bruises. A wreath of bay hung above the door was said by the country folk to keep the lightning and the bad luck from the house, a belief as old as Rome itself. The quiet thing to notice is the way a single dried bay leaf, dropped into a long, simmering pot, gives up its scent so slowly and so completely that, by the end, the whole house smells faintly of warm southern hillsides, even on the coldest and darkest night of the northern year. Let us close the 7th drawer and draw open the 8th. The 8th drawer holds parsley seed, the small seed of the most familiar of all kitchen herbs. We know the green curled leaf of parsley well enough, sprinkled over every dish, but it was the seed, small, ridged and grey-brown, that the apothecary kept in his drawer, for the seed holds the herb's medicine in its most concentrated form. The plant is native to the rocky shores of the central Mediterranean and was carried north by the Romans, who valued it greatly, weaving it into garlands and feeding it to their chariot horses to give them strength. The seed has a clean, slightly bitter, faintly sweet scent when crushed, sharper and greener than the leaf. In the apothecary, parsley seed was kept on the lower shelf and used chiefly for the water of the body. A weak infusion of the crushed seed was given to those troubled by a slow flow and by the small swellings of the ankles that come with age and damp weather. For parsley was reckoned one of the kindest of the gentle herbs that open the kidneys and let the body shed what it must. It was given also for the windy and griping belly. The quiet thing to notice is that the seed is slow and patient even in its growing, for the old gardeners had a saying that parsley seed must go 9 times down to the underworld and back before it will sprout. So long does it lie sleeping in the cold earth before the first green thread appears. And they said only the household, where the woman ruled with a gentle hand, could ever grow it well. Let us close the 8th drawer and open the 9th. The 9th drawer holds celery seed, the seed of the wild marsh celery the old herbals called smallage. It is the tiny seed, smaller almost than a grain of sand, of the strong wild ancestor of our garden celery, a plant of the salt marshes and the wet ditches near the sea, far more bitter and pungent than the mild blanched stalks we eat today. The seed, crushed between the fingers, gives up a sharp, savory, faintly bitter scent that is unmistakable once known, the very breath of a winter broth. In the apothecary, smallage seed was kept on the lower shelf with the parsley seed, for the two were close kin and close in use. A weak infusion of the crushed seed was given for the slow joints and the dull aching of the limbs that the old people felt most in the cold, wet month. For celery seed was counted among the spices that quietly helped the body to clear the heaviness from the blood. It was given too for the sluggish water of the body and for the windy belly after a heavy meal of meat. A little of the seed was simmered in honey for a sore and rasping throat. The quiet thing to notice is how the same plant that we now grow pale and mild and crisp, for the table was, in its wild and bitter form, once a serious medicine of the marsh, and how the seed still carries that older, fiercer character, a memory of the salt wind and the standing water from which it came. Let us close the 9th drawer and reach for the 10th. The 10th drawer holds horseradish, the fierce white root of the cold northern kitchen. It is the long, pale, knobbled root of a hardy plant of the field edges and the old gardens of the cooler lands, a root so strong that to grate it fresh is to set the whole kitchen weeping and the nose burning as though stung by smoke. The plant came first, the old books say, from the lands of Eastern Europe and Western Asia, and it spread north and west until it grew wild in every ditch of the cold countries. The smell of the fresh, grated root is sharp beyond almost anything else in this cabinet, a clean, fierce heat that flies straight up into the head and clears it in an instant. In the apothecary, horseradish root was kept fresh in the cool dark, for its strength faded once it was dried, and it was used as a great waker of the cold and sluggish body. A little of the grated root, taken with food, was given to those whose digestion had grown slow and cold, to bring up the appetite and warm the belly. A poultice of the grated root, wrapped in cloth so it would not burn the skin, was laid upon the aching joint and the cold stiff shoulder to draw the blood up warm. Steeped in wine or vinegar, it was given for the slow winter chest. The quiet thing to notice about horseradish is the strange kindness hidden in its violence, for the very fierceness that brings the tears is the same heat that opens the head, warms the blood, and drives off the dull cold heaviness of a long damp winter. Let us close the 10th drawer and open the 11th. The 11th drawer holds the leek, the gentle green and white stem of the onion family that the cold northern peoples loved above all. It is the long blanched stalk of a tall member of the onion tribe, milder and sweeter than its cousins, grown in the cottage gardens of the north and prized through the lean months of late winter, when little else stood green in the frozen beds. The leek was the food and the medicine of the poor, and it was held in such honor among the Welsh that it became the very emblem of that people, worn in the cap on the feast of their saint. Its smell, when cut, is soft and green and faintly sweet, far gentler than the bite of the onion or the garlic. In the apothecary and the cottage kitchen, the leek was given chiefly for the chest and the voice. A broth of leeks, slowly simmered, was the kind and warming supper given to one weak with a winter cold, and the soft cooked stem was eaten to soothe a rasping throat. and to clear the husky voice of the singer and the preacher. The juice of the leek, mixed with a little honey, was spooned for the deep cough. A poultice of the boiled green leaves was laid warm upon a swelling. The quiet thing to notice is how the leek, alone among the strong-smelling onion family, gives up almost all its fierceness in the cooking and becomes soft, sweet, and consoling. The very picture of a humble food that asks nothing and gives quiet comfort to the cold and the weary through the longest weeks of the year. Let us close the 11th drawer and open the 12th, which closes this first low row of plain and common things. The 12th drawer holds the chive and its small wild kindred, the gentlest of all the onion tribe. These are the slender, hollow, grass-green stems of the smallest of the onions, growing in soft round tussocks in the herb bed and along the cool, damp banks, sending up in summer their little round heads of pale lilac flowers that the bees so love. The chive is the mildest member of a fierce family, carrying only the faintest breath of the onion's sharpness, a green and tender whisper rather than a shout. In the apothecary, the chive and its wild cousins, the ramsons and the crow garlic of the spring woods, were kept as gentle helpers, used where the stronger garlic and onion would have been too harsh, as for children and for the very old and frail. A little of the chopped green, eaten with the spring food, was reckoned to clear the thick blood after the long heavy winter of salted meat and dark bread, and to bring back the appetite that the cold months had dulled. The wild ramsons of the April woods, with their broad green leaves and their drift of white star flowers, and their warm garlic scent rising through the whole grove, were gathered by the basketful and eaten as the first green tonic of the year, a quiet medicine of the season as much as of the cupboard. The quiet thing to notice is that the gentlest of all these onions is also the prettiest, for while its fierce cousins hide underground, the chive lifts its soft lilac flowers up into the summer light, as if to show that even the sharpest family may have a tender and a flowering member among them. We have come now to the end of the lowest row, the plain and common things any kitchen would know, and as we step up to the next row of drawers, the smell of the whole cabinet begins to change. The sharp green and oniony breath of the first row gives way now to something warmer and browner and sweeter, the smell of toasted seeds, and of the long, slow simmering of comforting things. For here begin the warm brown seeds of the kitchen shelf, the gentle digestive spices that every cook and every mother kept close to hand. Lean in a little and breathe, and let us open the 13th drawer. The 13th drawer holds fennel seed, the sweet warm seed of the tall feathery plant of the sunny bank. It is the small oval ridged green-brown seed of a plant that grows wild along the old roadsides of the south, sending up clouds of soft thread like leaves and broad flat heads of small yellow flowers in the late summer. The seed, crushed lightly between the fingers, gives up a warm, sweet scent very like aniseed, and a little like fresh hay, a smell that seems to promise comfort before ever it is tasted. The Romans loved it well and carried it everywhere they marched, so that to this day fennel grows wild along the lines of their old roads. In the apothecary, fennel seed sat in a glass jar on the middle shelf and was reached for many times a day, for it was among the gentlest and kindest of all the warm seeds. A simple infusion of a small spoonful of the crushed seed in hot water was the first remedy for the colicky belly of the baby, and for the slow griping wind that troubles the elderly after their supper. The same warm water was given to nursing mothers, for the old wisdom held that fennel steadied and increased the milk. A few of the seeds were chewed dry at the end of a long meal. To sweeten the breath and settle the stomach, a small custom still kept in many lands to this day. The quiet thing to notice is the way the warm, sweet smell of fennel rising from a cup seems itself to calm a fretful child, even before the first sip, as though the comfort lived in the scent as much as in the seed. Let us close the 13th drawer and open the 14th. The 14th drawer holds a nice seed, the small sweet seed often mistaken for its cousin the fennel. It is the little grey, brown seed of a slender annual of the warm and sheltered garden, with feathery leaves and small white flower heads native to the eastern Mediterranean and to the lands of the Levant. The seed carries a clear, sweet, licorice-like scent. Cleaner and more delicate than fennel, the very smell of the small comforting cakes and cordials of the old kitchens. The Romans baked it into a spiced cake served at the close of heavy wedding feasts to settle the full stomachs of the guests, and from that old custom, some say, comes the very idea of the wedding cake itself. In the apothecary, a nice seed was kept in clean glass beside the fennel, and the two were often used together. A simple infusion of the crushed seed in hot water was given to the colicky infant, to the old man with a windy belly, and to those troubled by a small dry, repeating cough that would not leave them. A slow syrup, made each autumn by simmering the seeds with honey and a little wine, was kept in stoneware for the long coughs of the winter children. The quiet thing to notice is how the warm sweetness of anise belongs so deeply to the small acts of comfort, to the bedtime cup and the sweetened cordial and the soft cake at the end of a feast, that even now the scent of it carries a feeling of being cared for and put gently to rest. Let us close the 14th drawer and reach for the 15th. The 15th drawer holds caraway seed, the warm peppery seed of the cool northern meadow. Tate is the small, narrow, curved, ridged seed of a slender plant of the damp meadows and roadside banks of the cooler lands, with feathery leaves much like the carrot to which it is kin. The seed, chewed, gives up a warm, faintly sweet, faintly peppery scent and taste, sharper and more savory than anise, the very flavor of the dark rye breads of the northern lands. The name came west through the Old French and the Spanish from an Arabic word, for caraway, like so much in this cabinet, was carried into Europe through the great spice markets of Cairo and Damascus. In the apothecary, caraway sat with the other warming seeds on the middle shelf and was used freely and kindly. An infusion of the seed was given for the sluggish digestion, for the colicky baby, and for the stubborn wind that troubles the very young and the very old alike. The seeds were chewed slowly at the close of a long meal. They were baked, too, into the small spiced cakes of the central and northern lands, and the old country wisdom held that caraway, taken at the wedding feast, would help the new couple to remain faithful and not to wander, so that the seed became a quiet charm of constancy as well as a medicine of the belly. The quiet thing to notice is how warm and homely the smell of caraway is, the smell of a dark loaf cooling on a windowsill in a cold land, a spice not of distant gardens, but of the near and familiar fields of home. Let us close the 15th drawer and open the 16th. The 16th drawer holds dill seed, the soft, warm seed of the ghost, green plant of the summer bed. It is the small, flat, ridged, light brown seed of a tall, slender annual whose feathery blue, green leaves are so fine and so soft that they seem almost to float above the garden bed like a faint green mist. The Romans grew it widely and called it by a name from which our word slowly came, and it spread with them across the whole of their world. The seed, crushed, gives up a clean, warm scent, gentler than caraway and a little like the anise, with a soft green note beneath. In the apothecary, dill was above all the herb of small kindnesses to the very young. A simple infusion of the seed in hot water, sweetened with a little honey, was the standard nursery remedy for the colicky baby and for the child kept awake and crying by the wind in its small belly, and indeed the very name of the gripe water that soothed countless infants for centuries comes, some say, from an old word meaning to lull and to soothe. A weak infusion was given to nursing mothers, for the old healers believed dill water steadied the milk, and so calmed the infant in turn. The dried flower heads were tucked into small linen sachets and laid in the cradle, that the small one might sleep softly. The quiet thing to notice is that of all the warm seeds in this whole cabinet, the dill has spent the greatest part of its long career in the service of small, fretful, sleepy beings, soothing the bellies and lulling the cries of the youngest and the most helpless, a gentle spice for gentle ends. Let us close the 16th drawer and reach for the 17th. The 17th drawer holds coriander seed, the round sweet seed of one of the oldest cultivated spices of all. It is the small, round, ribbed, pale brown seed of an annual of the warm garden, whose lower leaves are broad and rounded, and whose upper leaves are fine and lacy. Native to the lands about the eastern Mediterranean, the seed, unlike the sharp green leaf, carries a warm, sweet, faintly orange, peel scent, mild and pleasant and well loved by almost everyone. It is among the very oldest of the spices kept by humankind, for coriander seeds have been found laid in the burial chambers of the old pharaohs of Egypt, set there in small pots for the use of the dead in the next world. In the apothecary, the dried seed sat on the middle shelf and was used freely. A simple infusion of the crushed seed in hot water was given for the windy belly, for the slight headache that follows a heavy meal, and for the small queasiness of long travel. A few seeds were chewed at the close of a meal to sweeten the breath. The apothecaries of the East, in Baghdad and Isfahan and Cordoba, made small candied coriander seeds, each round seed coated in a hard shell of sugar, and these little comfits were given to children at the end of long meals to sweeten both the breath and the temper. The quiet thing to notice is how kind and forgiving this seed has been across 4,000 years, a small round comfort buried with kings and given to children alike, asking nothing and never once turning fierce. Let us close the 17th drawer and open the 18th. The 18th drawer holds cumin seed, the warm dark seed of the Levantine market. It is the small, narrow, ridged, brownish seed of a delicate low annual of the dry garden, native to the lands of the eastern Mediterranean, where it has been gathered and traded for at least 4,000 years. The seed carries a deep, warm, slightly bitter, slightly resinous scent that anyone who has ever stepped into a spice market of the East will know at once and remember always, for it seems to fill the very air of such places. In the apothecary, cumin sat beside the coriander and the caraway, kept in clean linen and parted with by the spoonful. A simple infusion of the seed in hot water was given for the sluggish and cold digestion, for the windy belly, and for the slight nausea that comes with the change of the season. The seeds were baked into the small loaves carried by the Crusader soldiers and the merchants of the long caravan roads, and the old country law held that cumin, taken at every meal, would keep a traveller faithful and stop him losing heart on the long journey far from home, so that, like the caraway, it became a quiet charm of constancy. A poultice of the warmed and crushed seed was laid on the cold and aching side. The quiet thing to notice is that the smell of cumin is the smell of a crossroads of the world, of the great markets where the caravans of the desert met the ships of the sea, a warm dark scent that has hung in the air of those trading places for longer than almost any city now standing has stood. Let us close the 18th drawer and reach for the 19th. The 19th drawer holds fenugreek seed, the hard golden seed with the scent of warm hay, and burnt sugar. Tate is the small, hard, angular mustard, yellow seed of a low clover, like plant of the warm, dry lands of the eastern Mediterranean and of India, where it has been grown since the oldest times. The seed is curiously hard and almost flavorless when raw, but when it is gently toasted it gives up a deep, warm scent, strange and unmistakable, somewhere between fresh, cut hay, burnt sugar, and maple. A smell that lingers long in the room and even, the old books worn, in the very sweat of one who has eaten much of it. The Egyptians used it in their embalming and their medicine, and the Greeks and the Romans grew it both as a fodder for cattle and as a healer of men. In the apothecary, fenugreek seed was kept on the middle shelf and used in two chief ways. Soaked in water, the seed swells and gives up a thick, soothing slime, and this gentle mucilage was given to coat and soothe a raw and burning throat and an inflamed and griping gut. A warm poultice of the ground seed was laid upon boils and swellings and slow, healing sores, to soften them and draw them to a head. A weak infusion was given to nursing mothers, for fenugreek was reckoned, like the fennel and the dill, to steady and strengthen the milk. The quiet thing to notice is that strange warm smell of toasting fenugreek, so sweet and so homely, and so impossible to forget, that drifts out of the kitchens of half the warm world even now, and tells the passing traveller, without a single word, that someone nearby is cooking something with patience and with care. Let us close the 19th drawer and open the 20th. The 20th drawer holds a duane, the tiny sharp seed the old books called the bishop's weed. It is the very small, oval, ridged, grey, brown seed of a low, feathery plant of the dry gardens of the East, much grown in the lands of Persia and India and carried west along the spice roads. Though it looks much like a tiny caraway, its scent is something else entirely. A fierce, hot, sharp smell very like the thyme but stronger and more biting, that seems to clear the head the moment the seed is crushed. In the apothecary of the East, and in those western cupboards lucky enough to hold a little of it, a duane was the great warm friend of the troubled belly. A pinch of the crushed seed steeped in hot water was the swift remedy for the sharp griping wind, for the cramping of the cold stomach, and for the heaviness that follows a meal too rich and too large. The same hot water, breathed in before it was drunk, was thought to clear a stuffed and aching head. A little of the seed, gently warmed in a cloth and held against the cheek, was the country cure for the aching tooth. The quiet thing to notice about ajwain is how much fierce strength is folded into so tiny a seed, smaller than a grain of rice, and yet able to clear a heavy head and quiet a cramping belly with no more than a pinch. A reminder that in this cabinet, as in life, the smallest things are very often the strongest. Let us close the 20th drawer and reach for the 21st. The 21st drawer holds the black cumin, the small dark seed the old herbals called nigella, and the blessed seed. These are the tiny, hard, black, three-cornered seeds of a delicate blue, flowered plant of the garden, a relative of the love, in a mist that the cottage gardeners grew for its pretty tousled bloom. The seed, crushed, gives up a warm, sharp, peppery scent, a little like oregano and a little like nutmeg, quite distinct from the true cumin with which it shares only a name. It was prized across the whole of the East, and there is an old and famous saying among the physicians of the Arab world that this small black seed is a remedy for every illness except for death itself. So great was the faith placed in it. In the apothecary, black cumin was kept on the middle shelf and used widely. The seeds were gently warmed and the rising scent breathed in to clear a stuffed head and an aching brow. A little of the ground seed, taken with honey, was given for the stubborn winter cough and the wheezing chest. The same was given for the sluggish belly and the windy gut. The dark fragrant seeds were sprinkled too upon the breads of the East, both for their savour and for the quiet good they were thought to do. The quiet thing to notice is the way these small black seeds, scattered across the golden crust of a warm loaf, look almost like a sprinkling of dark stars upon an evening field, a small daily medicine taken so gently and so often that those who ate it scarcely thought of it as medicine at all. Let us close the 21st drawer and open the 22nd. The 22nd drawer holds the poppy seed, the small kind seed of the great sleep flower, kept here in its gentle and harmless form. These are the tiny, slate, blue, kidney-shaped seeds of the opium poppy, ripe and dry, gathered from the rattling brown seed, heads at the very end of the summer. It is well to say at once that the seed itself, taken from the ripe head, holds almost none of the strong milk that makes the poppy so powerful and so dangerous a medicine in its other forms, for that milk is drawn from the unripe green head and is kept under lock in the highest drawers of all. The seed is the gentle and harmless part of the plant, the part the baker uses, with a soft, warm, faintly nutty scent that rises when it is lightly toasted. In the apothecary, poppy seed was kept on the middle shelf and used for soothing and for nourishing. The crushed seed, steeped in warm milk, made a soft and mild and faintly soothing drink that was given to fretful children at bedtime and to those whose sleep was thin and broken, a far gentler thing by far than the strong tinctures of the upper shelf. The seeds were ground into a sweet paste with honey for the convalescent who needed feeding up after a long illness. The quiet thing to notice is the strange double nature of this one plant, that from a single flower comes both the gentlest of bedtime comforts and the most powerful of all the cupboard's medicines, the soft harmless seed for the child and the strong dark milk locked away for the gravest hours, two faces of a single quiet blue-grey bloom. Let us close the 22nd drawer and reach for the 23rd. The 23rd drawer holds the sesame seed, the small flat seed of the warm lands with the soft golden oil. It is the tiny, flat, teardrop-shaped, pale gold seed of a tall annual of the hot, dry lands, one of the very oldest of all the cultivated oil seeds, grown in the lands of the East and of Africa, since times almost beyond reckoning. The seed has only a faint scent when raw, but when it is gently toasted it gives up a warm, rich, nutty smell that fills the kitchen, and from it is pressed a soft, sweet, golden oil that keeps well and does not quickly turn rancid, which made it precious indeed in the warm lands before any other good oil could be kept through the heat. In the apothecary, sesame was valued chiefly for that gentle oil. The warm oil was rubbed into dry and cracked skin, and into the stiff aching joints of the old, and it was warmed and dropped into the aching ear. The crushed seed, mixed with honey into a soft sweet paste, was given to the weak and the wasted to build them up again after long illness, for it is a rich and strengthening food. A gentle oil of sesame was the base into which many other medicines were stirred. The quiet carrier of stronger things. The quiet thing to notice is the old story, known in many lands, of the magic word that opened the robber's cave, the word that was the very name of this small seed, chosen, some say, because the ripe sesame pod splits open of its own accord with a soft sudden snap when it is fully dry, scattering its little golden treasures so that the seed itself became, in the old tale, the very emblem of a hidden door swinging open. Let us close the 23rd drawer and open the 24th, which closes this warm brown row of kitchen seeds. The 24th drawer holds the star anise, the beautiful 8-pointed seed pod that came from the far gardens of the East. It is the hard, woody, reddish-brown, star-shaped fruit of a small evergreen tree of the warm forests of southern China and the lands beyond, each pod a perfect 8-pointed star, each point a little boat-shaped pod holding a single shining seed. It is not kin at all to the small anise of the garden, and yet its scent is wonderfully alike, the same warm sweet licorice breath, but deeper and rounder, and with a hint of the forest in it. It came to the western cabinets late, and by long sea, brought back by the first traders to round the great capes. And so it was costly and somewhat rare, a beautiful object as much as a medicine, often kept whole in a small box where its perfect star shape could be admired. In the apothecary, where it could be had, star anise was used much as the small anise, but counted stronger. A single point of the star, broken off and steeped in hot water, was enough to make a warm sweet infusion for the windy and griping belly, and for the cold sluggish digestion. The same warm water was given for the stubborn cough of the winter chest. The quiet thing to notice is the perfect and patient beauty of the thing itself, for no machine and no hand of man made that flawless 8-pointed star, and yet there it lies in the drawer, dried hard and brown and perfect, a small piece of geometry grown quietly on a tree in a far forest, as if the spice cabinet held not only medicines, but also small finished works of an unhurried and careful art. We have come now to the end of the warm brown seeds of the kitchen shelf, and as we move on, the cabinet seems to grow a little quieter and a little more serious. For here begin the drawers of the things that did not grow in any garden of the cold north, the seeds and roots and resins that the caravans carried across the deserts, and the ships brought home across the wide warm seas. From here on, every drawer we open holds something that traveled far, and as we climb the cabinet the roads grow longer and the prices grow dearer. So settle a little deeper And let us open the 25th drawer. The 25th drawer holds the green cardamom, the small fragrant pod the merchants called the Queen of Spices. It is the small, three-sided, pale green pod of a tall, leafy plant of the wet, shaded forests of the hills of southern India, each papery pod holding a cluster of small, hard, black seeds. To open a fresh pod and breathe it in is one of the great pleasures of the whole cabinet, for cardamom carries a warm, sweet, cool, lemony, almost flowery scent, complex and lingering, quite unlike anything else upon the shelves. It was costly, for the pods must be picked by hand just before they ripen and split, and it travelled far, so that for most of the Middle Ages only the wealthy could keep it. In the apothecary, cardamom was kept on the higher middle shelf, the pods whole so as not to lose their scent, and crushed only as needed. A few crushed pods steeped in hot water made a warm, fragrant infusion for the cold and sluggish digestion, for the windy belly, and for the heaviness that follows a great meal. The seeds were chewed to sweeten the breath, and were thought to lift the spirits of the heavy-hearted, for their bright scent seemed to clear the mind as well as the mouth. The apothecaries of the East stirred cardamom into their warm and strengthening drinks for the weary. The quiet thing to notice is that this is a spice that gives almost all of itself to the nose, for the scent of a single crushed pod can fill a small room. And the old healers believed that simply to breathe that bright, cool fragrance was already to begin to feel a little lighter and a little less burdened. Let us close the 25th drawer and open the 26th. The 26th drawer holds the black cardamom, the larger, smoky cousin of the green. It is the bigger, darker, rougher pod of a related plant of the cool, damp foothills of the great mountains to the north of India and the lands beyond, dried not in the sun, but over a slow smouldering fire, which gives it a deep, smoky, resinous, almost camphorous scent quite different from the bright sweetness of the green pod. It is the spice of the colder and higher lands, stronger and earthier, and it was prized by the mountain peoples and traded down into the warm lands below. In the apothecary, black cardamom was the stronger and more warming of the two, kept for the deeper colds and the more stubborn chills. A crushed pod steeped in hot water made a dark warming infusion given for the cold settled deep in the chest, for the rattling winter cough, and for the sluggish belly that no gentler spice would move. The smoky warmth of it was thought to drive the cold and the damp out of a body chilled to the very bone by a hard journey through the mountain passes. The quiet thing to notice is the way the two cardamoms, the bright green and the dark smoky, sit side by side in their neighboring drawers like two members of one family who have lived very different lives, the one raised in the warm lowland forests and dried in the gentle sun, the other reared in the cold high foothills and cured in the smoke of a mountain fire, each carrying in its scent the whole memory of the place that made it. Let us close the 26th drawer and reach for the 27th. The 27th drawer holds the grains of paradise, the peppery seeds of the far African coast with the heavenly name. These are the small, hard, reddish-brown, angular seeds of a tall reed, like plant of the wet forests of the western coast of Africa, in the lands the old merchants called the grain coast for this very spice. The seeds carry a warm, sharp, peppery heat, but softer and rounder than the true pepper, with a hint of cardamom and ginger and even of citrus woven through the fire. They were given their lovely name by the merchants who sold them, for the seeds came from so far, and by so secret a road, up through the great desert by camel caravan and across the sea, that the sellers could claim they grew in the very garden of paradise, and so charge a princely price for them. In the apothecary, where this costly spice could be found, grains of paradise were used as a warming medicine, much like the pepper, but gentler and more fragrant. A pinch of the crushed seed, taken in warm wine, was given to warm the cold and sluggish stomach, to ease the griping wind, and to bring a little heat back into a body chilled by the damp. The quiet thing to notice is the long secret road these small seeds traveled, kept deliberately mysterious by the merchants who grew rich upon them, so that the cold customers of the north, breathing in the warm, peppery scent, truly believed they were tasting something gathered in a garden at the edge of the world, and paid gladly for the dream as much as for the spice. Let us close the 27th drawer and open the 28th. The 28th drawer holds the cubib, the little-tailed pepper of the far eastern isles. It is the small, round, wrinkled, dark brown berry of a climbing vine of the warm, wet forests of the great eastern islands, and it is known at once by the little stalk, the small tail, that stays attached to each dried berry, so that the old merchants called it the tailed pepper. Its scent is sharp and peppery, like the true pepper, but with a cool, piney, almost camphorous note woven through it, a freshness that sets it apart. It was carried west along the long sea and spice roads through the hands of the Arab merchants, who for a long time kept the secret of where exactly it grew. In the apothecary, cubeb was kept on the higher middle shelf and valued, especially for the head and the chest and the breath. The crushed berries were warmed and their cool, sharp scent breathed in to clear a stuffed and heavy head and a clogged nose. A little of the ground berry was smoked or burned, and the fragrant smoke drawn in to ease the tight wheezing chest, an old remedy for the troubled breath. Chewed, the berry sweetened a foul breath and was thought to ease the sore and aching gum. The quiet thing to notice is that cool, clean, piney note hidden inside the pepper. Heat, for cubeb is one of those spices that seems to do two things at once, to warm and to refresh together, to bring up the heat of the pepper and at the same time to open and clear the head like a breath of mountain air. Let us close the 28th drawer and reach for the 29th. The 29th drawer holds the long pepper, the slender catkin, spice that was once dearer than the round pepper we know. It is the small, slender, grey-brown, cylindrical spike of a climbing plant of the hot forests of India and the Eastern Isles, looking less like a berry than like a tiny dried catkin, made of many minute fruits all fused together along a little spike. Its scent is warm and peppery, but sweeter and more complex than the round black pepper, with a hint of cinnamon and a lingering heat that grows slowly on the tongue and stays longer than the bite of common pepper. In the days of Rome, and through much of the Middle Ages, the long pepper was more prized and more costly than the round pepper, and only later, as the round corns grew cheap and common, did the long pepper slip into the rarer and dearer drawers. In the apothecary, long pepper was the great warming spice for the cold and failing body. A little of the ground spike, taken in warm honey or warm wine, was given to those whose inner fire had grown low, whose digestion was cold and slow. and whose limbs were heavy with the chill of age and damp. It was a chief ingredient in many of the great warming electuaries, the rich spiced pastes of the upper shelf that we shall meet later, given to revive the weak and the worn. The quiet thing to notice is how the fortunes of a spice can rise and fall like the fortunes of a noble house, for this long pepper, once the proud and costly favorite of emperors, was slowly displaced by its humbler round cousin, and now lies a little forgotten in its drawer, still warm, still fragrant, still ready, but no longer the great prince it once was. Let us close the 29th drawer and open the 30th. The 30th drawer holds the galangal, the warm aromatic root the old herbals so loved, and we have so nearly forgotten. Tate is the firm, knobbled, reddish, skinned root of a tall leafy plant of the warm wetlands of southern China and the eastern Isles, a near cousin of the ginger, but with a scent all its own, sharper, more peppery, more piney and cool, with a deep aromatic warmth beneath. In the Middle Ages the galangal was one of the most beloved and most often named of all the spices in the medical books and the cookery books alike, and the great Abbess Hildegard of Bingen, writing in the 12th century, praised it warmly and called it, in her own tongue, the spice of life, recommending it for the failing heart and the cold, low spirits. In the apothecary, dried galangal root was kept on the higher middle shelf, and a slow decoction of the chopped root was given to warm the cold stomach, to settle the seasick and the travel-worn, and to lift the heart of one sunk in the low cold heaviness of a long winter. A little of the powdered root was taken on the tongue for a sore throat and a foul breath. The quiet thing to notice is how a spice so loved and so trusted for so many centuries could so quietly slip out of the common cupboard. Until now most cooks of the cold lands have never once smelled its sharp, warm scent, and yet here it waits in its drawer, exactly as it always was, warm and piney and faintly sweet. A forgotten favorite of a world that has moved on. Let us close the 30th drawer and reach for the 31st. The 31st drawer holds the dried ginger, the warm golden root that warmed half the world. It is the firm, jointed fawn, colored root of a tall reed, like plant of the warm wet lands of the east, dug and washed and dried until it is hard and pale, and keeps for a long year or more. The fresh root is hot and juicy and sharp, but the dried root, ground to a warm golden powder, carries a deeper, rounder, more penetrating heat, with a sweet woody scent that fills the nose and seems to promise warmth before ever it is tasted. Ginger was among the most widely traded and best loved of all the spices, and it grew common enough by the late Middle Ages that even the humbler households kept a little of it for the cold months. In the apothecary, dried ginger was the great and gentle warmer. A warm infusion of the powdered root, sweetened with honey, was the first and surest remedy for the cold settling on the chest, for the queasy and unsettled stomach, for the sickness of the sea and the long road, and for the cold cramping of the belly. The same warm cup brought the blood up and warmed the chilled limbs of one come in cold from the snow. Candied in syrup and dried, the root was kept as a sweet for the convalescent and the travel sick. The quiet thing to notice is how kindly and how broadly this one warm root has served, soothing the seasick sailor and the carriage, sick child and the cold old man, and the queasy young mother all alike, a spice so gentle and so trusted that it has been given, without fear, to the most delicate stomachs in the world, for longer than any of us can count. Let us close the 31st drawer and open the 32nd. The 32nd drawer holds the turmeric, the bright golden root that stains the fingers like the sun. It is the firm, knobbled root of a tall leafy plant of the warm, wet east, a near cousin of the ginger. But where the ginger is pale, the turmeric, broken open, is a deep and glowing orange, gold, so bright that it stains the fingers, the cloth, and the very mortar in which it is ground a warm yellow that no washing will quite take away. Dried and powdered, it has a warm, earthy, faintly bitter, faintly peppery scent, mild and pleasant. It was the great golden dye and medicine of the East, used to color the robes of holy men and the food of feasts alike, and it came west along the spice roads, valued both for its color and for its quiet healing. In the apothecary, turmeric was kept on the higher middle shelf and was given for the sluggish liver, for the heavy and bilious stomach, and for the slow healing wound. A little of the golden powder, mixed into warm milk with a touch of honey, was given to the bruised and the aching, and to those recovering from a long illness, a warm golden cup the old healers of the East trusted deeply. A paste of the powder was laid upon cuts and grazes and slow sores, for it was thought to clean the wound and quicken its closing. The quiet thing to notice is that warm golden color itself, so bright and so glad, that seems to carry a little of the warmth of the sun of the lands where it grew, so that even on the darkest winter evening, a single spoonful stirred into a cup of warm milk turns the whole drink the color of a summer afternoon. Let us close the 32nd drawer and reach for the 33rd. The 33rd drawer holds the zidori, the bitter aromatic root the old apothecaries called the white turmeric. It is the pale, firm, aromatic root of yet another cousin of the ginger and the turmeric, from the same warm wet lands of the East, but with a scent all its own, sharper and more camphorous and more bitter, with a hint of mango and of pine beneath the warmth. It was much used in the medieval cupboards of Europe, where it arrived by the long spice roads, and then, like the galangal, it slowly faded from common use as newer spices came in. In the apothecary, zidori was kept on the higher middle shelf and valued as a strong warming and settling root. A decoction of the chopped, dried root was given for the cold and windy belly, for the heaviness and griping that follow a poor digestion, and as a tonic to revive the appetite of one worn down by a long sickness. A little of the powdered root was taken for a foul breath and a sore mouth. It was counted, too, among the spices that strengthened the body against bad airs, and so found its place in many of the great compound medicines of the upper shelf. The quiet thing to notice is that this is one of the truly lost spices of the cabinet, for where the ginger and the turmeric remain well known to this day, the zidori has slipped almost entirely out of memory, so that to open its drawer and breathe its sharp camphorous warmth is to meet a scent that whole centuries once knew well, and that scarcely anyone now living has ever smelled at all. Let us close the 33rd drawer and open the 34th. The 34th drawer holds the asafoetida, the strong gum, resin the old books called the food of the gods, and the devil's dung in the very same breath. It is the hardened gum, resin that bleeds from the cut root of a tall fennel, like plant of the dry highlands of Persia and the lands to the east, gathered into hard reddish, brown lumps that smell so strongly and so strangely of garlic and onion and something sulphurous beneath, that a single small piece will scent a whole closed cupboard and cling to the fingers for an hour. The two old names tell the whole story of it, for raw it smells so foul that men called it the devil's dung, and yet when it is cooked, that fierce reek melts away into a deep savoury warmth, so pleasing that the same men called it the food of the gods. In the apothecary, asafoetida was kept tightly wrapped and shut away in its own drawer, lest its smell taint the gentler spices, and it was parted within tiny pieces. A very little dissolved in warm water was the great remedy of the East, and of the old Western cupboards for the windy and griping belly, for the cramping gut, and for the cold sluggish digestion that no gentler spice would move. It was given, too, for the troubled and fluttering nerves, and for the hysterical fit, for its very strength was thought to startle the wandering spirits back into their proper places. The quiet thing to notice is the strange double life of this resin, so violently foul in the raw lump, and so deeply savoury, comforting once cooked, a spice that seems to teach, as plainly as anything in this cabinet, that a first harsh impression may hide a deep and warming kindness underneath. Let us close the 34th drawer and reach for the 35th. The 35th drawer holds the mastic, the small golden tears of resin from the little tree of one single island. It is the pale, clear, golden resin that weeps from the cut bark of a low, shrubby tree that grows in the whole world, truly well in only one place, the dry stony south of a single Greek island in the warm eastern sea, where for thousands of years the people have scored the bark and gathered the slow tears of resin as they harden in the sun into small, clear, golden drops. The scent of mastic is clean and fresh and faintly piney, with a cool sweetness like cedar and a hint of the sea, and when it is chewed it softens into a fragrant gum that sweetens the breath, and was, indeed, the very first chewing gum of the old world. In the apothecary, mastic was kept on the higher shelf in a small box, for it was costly and came from so far and so single a source. The small clear tears were chewed to sweeten the breath and to clean and strengthen the gums and the teeth. A little of the resin, dissolved in warm water or warm wine, was given to settle a sour and griping stomach and to ease the slow, healing ulcer within. The fragrant resin was burned too, as a sweet smoke to cleanse the air of a sick room. The quiet thing to notice is that of all the spices in this great cabinet, this one alone comes truly from a single small place on the whole round earth, gathered drop by hand from the same groves of low trees on the same stony hillsides, so that to chew a single golden tear of mastic is to taste the resin of one particular sunlit island and nowhere else at all. Let us close the 35th drawer and open the 36th. The 36th drawer holds the sumac, the dark red ground berry of the warm hillside with the clean sour bite. It is the deep brick, red powder ground from the small fuzzy berries of a shrub of the dry stony hillsides of the lands about the eastern Mediterranean, where it grows in great thickets and lifts its dark red cones of berries to the late summer sun. The powder carries a clean, sharp, fruity sourness, like the tang of lemon, but softer and deeper and more rounded, with no bitterness behind it. Before the lemon was widely known in those lands, the sumac was the great souring spice of the kitchen, and it was a medicine as well. In the apothecary, sumac was kept on the middle shelf, the dark red powder in a clean jar. A little of the powder, steeped in water to make a clean sour drink, was given to cool the body in a burning fever, and to quench the great thirst of the sick, for the soreness was thought to refresh and to steady. The same sour wash was used as a gargle for the sore and swollen throat, and as a rinse for the sore mouth. A poultice of the ground berry was laid upon a slow, healing sore. The quiet thing to notice is how the sumac brings the clean, bright soreness of the lemon to the cabinet of a world that for long ages had no lemon at all, a deep red dust gathered from a wild hillside shrub, carrying in it the same cooling, refreshing, thirst-quenching tartness, so that the sick of the old lands could be given the cool sour comfort of a fruit that had not yet come to them. Let us close the 36th drawer and reach for the 37th. The 37th drawer holds the juniper berry, the small blue-black berry of the prickly evergreen of the cold open hills. It is the small, round, blue-black, soft, fleshed berry of a low-spreading evergreen shrub of the cold open heaths and the high stony moors of the north. The only true spice in this whole cabinet that the cold lands themselves could grow, for the juniper needs no warm southern sun, but thrives among the rocks and the wind where little else will stand. The berry, crushed, gives up a clean, resinous, piney scent, sharp and fresh and a little sweet, the very breath of a cold hillside in autumn. In the apothecary, dried juniper berries were kept on the middle shelf, and they were one of the trusted helpers of the cold and damp body. A few crushed berries steeped in hot water made an infusion given to clear the slow water of the body and to ease the small swellings of the legs, for juniper was reckoned one of the gentle openers of the kidneys. The same warm cup was given for the cold and griping wind and for the slow joints that ache in the wet months. The fragrant berries were burned, too, as a clean sharp smoke to cleanse the air of a room where sickness had been, a practice as old as the cold lands themselves. The quiet thing to notice is that of all the spices on these shelves, gathered from the warm forests and the far islands and the deserts of the world, this small blue berry alone is a child of the cold and the wind and the stony northern ground, a humble local treasure growing wild on the very hills outside the apothecary's own door, asking nothing of the long sea roads at all. Let us close the 37th drawer and open the 38th. The 38th drawer holds the allspice, the single small berry that seems to hold all the other spices at once, the latecomer from across the Western Ocean. It is the small, round, dark brown, dried berry of a tall evergreen tree of the warm islands of the Western Sea, the lands the old sailors called the New World, and it was among the first of the spices brought back across the great ocean by the early voyagers. They gave it its name because the warm scent of the crushed berry seems to hold within it the smell of several of the older spices, all woven together, the warmth of the clove, the sweetness of the cinnamon, the depth of the nutmeg, and a touch of the pepper beneath, so that a single berry seems to carry a whole cabinet folded inside it. In the apothecary, allspice was a welcome and useful newcomer, kept on the higher middle shelf, and used much as the older warming spices. A few crushed berries steeped in hot water made a warm, fragrant infusion for the cold and windy belly, for the sluggish digestion, and for the chill that creeps in before a fever. A poultice of the warmed ground berry was laid upon the aching joint and the cold, stiff limb. The oil pressed from the berry was rubbed upon the sore tooth and the aching gum, for it carried that same warm, numbing comfort the clove was loved for. The quiet thing to notice is how strange it must have seemed to the old apothecaries of the cold north to open a single small drawer and breathe a scent that held within it the warmth of clove and cinnamon and nutmeg all together. 3 treasures of 3 far separate lands, somehow gathered into one humble berry from an island none of them would ever see. Let us close the 38th drawer and reach for the 39th. We pass now into the row of the peppers and the pungent things of the far eastern coasts, and the smell of the cabinet grows sharper and hotter here, full of that clean, fierce heat that flies up into the nose and wakes the sleepy head. These are the drawers that came up the long sea roads from the hot, wet coasts, where the climbing vines grew thick in the dripping forest, and each one carries its own particular fire. The 39th drawer holds the white pepper, the same berry as the black, but stripped to its pale inner heart. It is the dried inner seed of the very same pepper vine of the Malabar coast that gave us the common black pepper. But here the ripe red berries are soaked in water until their dark outer skins soften and rub away, leaving only the smooth, pale, grey, white inner seed, which dries hard and round and ivory-coloured. Its scent is cleaner and less complex than the black, the dark woody notes washed away with the skin, leaving a sharper, more direct, more penetrating heat. It was dearer than the black, for the soaking and rubbing took more labour, and so it lay in a higher drawer. In the apothecary, white pepper was used much as the black, as a warming spice for the cold and sluggish stomach. But it was favoured where a clean, sharp heat was wanted without the dark, woody savour of the whole corn, as in the pale broths given to the sick and the convalescent, so that the warming virtue might be had, without troubling the delicate eye with dark specks in a clear cup. A pinch in warm wine warmed the chilled body and lit the slow inner fire. The quiet thing to notice is how the same small berry can wear 2 such different faces, the dark wrinkled corn full of woody depth and the smooth pale seed all clean fire, the one and the other being only the outside and the inside of a single fruit, so that here, in 2 neighbouring drawers, lie the husk and the heart of one and the same thing. Let us close the 39th drawer and open the 40th. The 40th drawer holds the green peppercorn, the young soft berry of the pepper vine kept in brine, the freshest face of the pepper family. It is the same fruit of the same Malabar vine once more, but here gathered young and green and soft before it has ripened and hardened, and kept from spoiling not by drying, but by laying it in a strong brine or a sharp vinegar, so that it stays soft and green and fresh, tasting in its small crock. Its scent and taste are bright and green, and only gently hot, the full woody fire of the dried corn not yet grown into it, fresher and lighter than either the black or the white. It travelled less well than the dried spice, for it had to be kept wet, and so it was rarer in the cold far cupboards, and more a thing of the warm lands near where it grew. In the apothecary, where it could be had, the soft green corns were valued as a milder and fresher warming spice, gentle enough for the more delicate stomach that the fierce dried pepper would trouble. A few of the soft berries, crushed and steeped in warm water, gave a mild warming drink for the queasy and the cold-bellied. The quiet thing to notice is how the pepper family, met now in its 3rd drawer, has shown us its whole life across these neighbouring shelves, the soft green youth of the brined corn, the smooth pale middle age of the white seed, and the dark wrinkled fullness of the old black corn, the same single fruit caught at 3 different moments of its growing, like 3 portraits of one life hung side by side. Let us close the 40th drawer and reach for the 40 first. The 41st drawer holds the clove, the small dark nail-shaped bud that came from a handful of tiny far islands and was worth a fortune. It is the small dark brown dried flower, bud of a tall evergreen tree that grew, for the whole of the old world's long history, on only a few small volcanic islands in the warm far eastern sea, the islands the merchants called the Spice Islands, and nowhere else at all. Each clove is a tiny unopened flower, bud, picked just before it would have bloomed, dried hard until it looks like a small dark nail, from which it takes its very name. The scent of the clove is one of the strongest and most unmistakable in the whole cabinet, deep, warm, sweet, and almost burning, with a numbing sharpness that prickles the tongue and clears the head. Because it came from so few small islands and so far away, the clove was for centuries one of the most precious spices on earth, fought over by merchants and kings. In the apothecary, the clove was the great spice of the mouth and the tooth. A single clove, held against an aching tooth, gave up its warm numbing oil and dulled the pain. The surest and most beloved tooth-ache remedy of the whole old world. The oil pressed from the buds was dabbed on the sore gum. A few cloves steeped in hot water gave a warm fragrant drink for the cold belly and the queasy stomach. The fragrant buds were chewed to sweeten a foul breath. The quiet thing to notice is the very great distance these small dark nails traveled from a few specks of land in the farthest eastern sea, through more hands and more ships and more deserts than any of us could count, to lie at last in a small drawer in a cold northern town, still carrying, after all those thousands of miles, the warm, sweet, burning scent of the volcanic island groves where they grew. Let us close the 41st drawer and open the 42nd. The 42nd drawer holds the cassia, the common cinnamon, the warm, sweet bark that most people knew when they spoke of cinnamon at all. It is the dried inner bark of a tall evergreen tree of the warm forests of southern China and the lands of the eastern coasts, peeled in long strips and dried until it curls into hard, rough quills of a deep reddish brown. It is close kin to the true and finer cinnamon that waits for us in a higher drawer, and to most people through most of history the two were not clearly told apart, for both gave the same warm, sweet scent that we all know and love. The cassia is the bolder and the rougher of the two, its bark thicker, its scent stronger and a little more biting, with a hint of warmth like a far-off fire. It was the cinnamon of the common table and the common cupboard, dearer than the kitchen seeds but far cheaper than the true Ceylon bark of the locked drawers. In the apothecary, cassia was the warm, sweet comforter. A quill or two simmered in milk or wine made a warm, sweet drink for the cold and griping belly, for the queasy stomach, and for the chill that comes before a fever. A little of the ground bark, taken in honey, was given for the slow winter cough and the loose and watery gut. The quiet thing to notice is how this warm, sweet scent of cinnamon, which we now think of as the very smell of comfort and of the warm kitchen at festival time, was for the old apothecaries first of all a medicine, a warming and a settling thing, so that the smell we breathe today in a glad and easy moment was once the smell of being gently tended and made well Let us close the 42nd drawer and reach for the 43rd. The 43rd drawer holds the Sichuan pepper, the curious tingling spice from the far mountains of the east that is no true pepper at all. It is the small, reddish-brown, dried husk of the berry of a prickly ash tree of the cool mountain lands of western China, and despite its name it is no relation to the pepper vine, for its heat is of an altogether different and stranger kind. It does not so much burn the tongue as set it gently buzzing and tingling, a curious bright numbing fizz quite unlike any other spice, beneath a clean scent of citrus peel and pine and warm wood. It came west only in small amounts and was little known in the cold far cupboards, but in the lands nearer to where it grew it was both a fine spice and a quiet medicine. In the apothecary of those lands, the dried husks were used for the cold and aching mouth, for that strange tingling numbness was found to dull a sore tooth and a sore gum much as the clove did, but in its own buzzing way. A little steeped in warm water was given for the cold and cramping belly, and for the sluggish digestion. The quiet thing to notice is that odd and wonderful tingling, found nowhere else upon these shelves. That bright buzzing numbness that creeps slowly across the tongue and the lips after a single husk is tasted, as though the spice were a small living thing humming very faintly against the skin, a sensation so strange and so particular that those who have once felt it never forget the small mountain husk that gave it. Let us close the 43rd drawer and open the 44th. The 44th drawer holds the tamarind, the dark sour pod, fruit of the great spreading tree of the warm lands. It is the long brown, brittle pod of a tall and beautiful spreading tree of the hot dry lands of Africa and India, each pod holding hard seeds wrapped in a soft, dark, sticky, sour, sweet pulp, the color of old toffee, that is the part both eaten and used. The pulp carries a deep, fruity, sour scent, like dried plums turned sharp, sweet and tart at once, refreshing on a hot day. It traveled west in its dried, sticky cakes along the spice roads, keeping well for long journeys, and so found its place even in the cold far cupboards. In the apothecary, tamarind was kept on the middle shelf, the dark, sticky pulp wrapped in leaf or cloth, and it was valued above all as a gentle cooler and a kindly loosener of the bound belly. A little of the pulp, dissolved in warm water into a clean, sour, sweet drink, was given to cool the body in a burning fever, to quench the great thirst of the sick, and to ease the bound and sluggish gut without any of the violence of the stronger purges. The same cool sour drink was given for the queasy and bilious stomach. The quiet thing to notice is how kindly and gently this dark sour fruit does its work. For where many of the medicines that loosen the bound body are fierce and griping and to be feared, the tamarind asks only that the sick should sip a cool, sweet, sour drink that tastes, on a hot and feverish day, less like a medicine than like a small and welcome refreshment. Let us close the 44th drawer and reach for the 45th. The 45th drawer holds the dried pomegranate seed, the small jewel, red grain the old apothecaries called anadana, the sour seed of the fruit of kings. It is the small, hard, dark red, sticky seed of the pomegranate, that ancient many, chambered fruit of the warm lands of Persia and the eastern Mediterranean, here dried until the once bright juice has shrunk to a sticky dark coat upon the hard little seeds. The pomegranate has been honored since the very oldest times, carved upon old temple walls and woven into the oldest stories, and every part of it, the sour seed, the bitter rind, the bright juice, had its use in the old cupboards. The dried seed carries a deep, sour, fruity tang. In the apothecary, the dried seeds and the dried rind were kept together on the middle shelf. A little of the crushed seed, steeped in water, gave a clean sour drink to cool a fever and settle a queasy and bilious stomach. The dried bitter rind, ground and given in small, careful doses, was the old and trusted remedy for the worms that troubled the bellies of country children, a use known to the physicians of the very oldest schools. A wash made from the bitter rind was used upon the sore mouth and the loose and bleeding gum. The quiet thing to notice is how this single fruit, so beautiful when broken open with its hundreds of glowing red seeds packed in their pale chambers, like a casket of small jewels, gave to the old apothecary so many separate medicines: the cooling sour seed, the worming bitter rind, the soothing wash, as though one fruit had been made to hold a whole small cabinet of cures inside its leathery red skin. Let us close the 45th drawer and open the 46th. The 46th drawer holds the caper, the small pickled flower, bud of the wild rock, clinging shrub of the warm coasts. It is the small, hard, green, unopened flower, bud of a low straggling shrub that clings to the dry stone walls and the bare sun-baked cliffs of the warm lands about the Mediterranean, picked tiny and tight before it can open into its brief and beautiful white flower, and then kept from spoiling by laying it in salt or in a sharp vinegar brine. The pickled bud carries a sharp, tangy, briny, faintly mustardy scent and bite, clean and bracing. The shrub itself is a marvel of toughness, thriving where almost nothing else will grow, drawing its life from bare hot rock, and the old healers respected a plant of such hardy strength. In the apothecary, the pickled buds and, more often, the dried bark of the caper root were kept on the middle shelf. The bark of the root, dried and given in a little wine, was the old remedy for the sluggish and swollen liver, and the slow and heavy spleen, and for the dull aching that the old people felt low in the side after the dark months. The sharp pickled buds, eaten with food, were thought to wake a slow appetite and stir a cold digestion. The quiet thing to notice is the strange and stubborn life of the plant itself, clinging to the bare hot cliff where no soil seems to lie at all, opening its delicate white flowers for a single morning above the sea before they fall. A plant that the old healers prized exactly because it drew such vigor out of such hard and barren ground, as though that hardiness might pass into the one who took its medicine. Let us close the 46th drawer and reach for the 47th. The 47th drawer holds the prickly ash bark, the tingling bark of the thorny tree the country folk called the toothed tree. It is the rough grey bark of a small thorny tree, kin to the siquan husk we met a little while ago, growing both in the warm east and, in its own sister forms, in the woods of the western New World, where the settlers and the older peoples both knew it well. The bark, chewed, gives up first a sharp aromatic warmth, and then that same strange tingling numbness that the mountain husk gave, a slow buzzing fizz that spreads across the tongue and the gum and dulls the feeling there. From this very virtue came its common name, for the country folk on both sides of the great ocean used it for one thing above all. In the apothecary and the cottage alike, a small piece of the bark was chewed slowly and held against an aching tooth. and the spreading numbness it brought dulled the deep pain of the bad tooth on a long, cold night, when no other help could be had, so that the tree became known simply as the tooth-ache tree wherever it grew. A little of the bark steeped in warm water was given, too, for the cold and sluggish belly. The quiet thing to notice is how the same gentle, tingling numbness, so strange and curious when first met in the mountain husk, becomes here a true and faithful mercy. A piece of bark whittled from a thorny tree by the kitchen door and pressed against a child's aching jaw at midnight, the only ease to be had until the slow grey dawn came up at last over the cold fields. Let us close the 47th drawer and open the 48th. The 48th drawer holds the bitter pomegranate rind kept on its own, the dried red-brown peel that the old worm doctors trusted above almost anything. We met the sour seed of the pomegranate a few drawers back, but the dried rind, the leathery red-brown skin of the fruit, was kept and used so much on its own that it earned a small drawer of its very own in the well-stocked cabinet. The dried rind is hard and curling, and a deep dull red, bitter and astringent on the tongue, drawing the mouth tight, with a faint dry fruity scent beneath the bitterness. In the apothecary, the dried rind was kept carefully on the middle shelf, for it was a true and serious medicine, and not a mere flavouring. Its great and ancient use was against the worms that so often troubled the bellies of country children and grown folk alike in those days of uncertain food and water. A careful decoction of the dried rind, given in small measured doses by an experienced hand, was one of the oldest and most trusted of all the worming remedies, known to the physicians of the very oldest schools and handed down faithfully through every century after. The same bitter astringent wash, much weakened, was used upon the loose and bleeding gum and the sore mouth, for it drew the slack tissues tight and stayed the small bleeding. The quiet thing to notice is how a thing we now throw away without a thought, the leathery peel of a fruit, was once a careful and respected medicine, gathered, dried, stored, and measured out by a knowing hand, a reminder that in the old cabinet there was scarcely any part of any plant, however humble, that some patient healer had not found a use for. Let us close the 48th drawer and reach for the 49th. The 49th drawer holds the sancho, the bright tingling spice of the far eastern gardens, the gentle cousin of the mountain husk. It is the small dried husk and leaf of a low prickly ash of the gardens and hillsides of the far eastern isles, a near and gentler cousin of the mountain pepper we met before, milder in its heat and brighter in its scent, with a fresh green citrus note like lemon leaf woven through the warm tingling. In the lands where it grew it was both a fine and delicate spice, and a quiet medicine of the kitchen cupboard. In the apothecary of those eastern lands, the dried husk was used for the cold and sluggish stomach and the windy belly, a pinch steeped in warm water to settle and to warm. The same gentle tingling was used, as with all this curious family, to dull a sore tooth and a sore gum. The young green leaves, fragrant and bright, were laid upon the food of the sick to wake a tired appetite, for their fresh scent was thought to lift the spirits and call back the wish to eat. The quiet thing to notice is how this whole small family of tingling spices, the mountain husk and the tooth-hutch bark, and now this bright garden cousin, scattered across drawers gathered from lands thousands of miles apart, all share that one strange and gentle gift of the slow buzzing numbness, as though some single old idea had been quietly discovered again and again by peoples who never met, each finding in their own prickly tree the same small mercy for the aching mouth. Let us close the 49th drawer and open the 50th, which brings us to the very middle of our long, slow walk. The 50th drawer holds the cinnamon leaf, the fragrant leaf of the cinnamon tree, a quiet and gentler thing than the precious bark that waits for us further up. It is the dried leaf of the same noble tree whose inner bark gives the costly true cinnamon of the locked upper drawers, a broad glossy leaf of the warm forests of the southern isle where the finest cinnamon grows. The leaf carries a warm, spicy scent, sweet and a little like the clove, gentler and greener than the deep sweetness of the bark, and from it an oil was pressed that held much of the warm virtue of the tree in a humbler and cheaper form. In the apothecary, where the precious bark was kept locked away and measured out by the grain, the leaf and its oil were the everyday workers, kept lower down and used more freely. An infusion of the dried leaf made a warm, gently sweet drink for the cold and windy belly and the queasy stomach, much as the bark would, but at a price the humbler household could bear. The warm oil was rubbed upon the cold, aching joint and the chilled limb. The quiet thing to notice, here at the very middle of our walk, is how this single great tree gives to the cabinet both its dearest and one of its humblest treasures, the precious curled bark locked behind brass on the high shelf, worth a small fortune by the ounce, and the broad green leaf kept low and used by the cupful, the one and the other grown on the very same branches, so that the rich and the poor alike could carry home, each in their own measure, a little of the warm, sweet breath of the same far island tree. And here, with the leaf of the cinnamon in our hand, we have come to the halfway mark of our 100 drawers, with the rarer and the dearer half still waiting above us. Rest here a moment and breathe before we climb a little higher. We have crossed the middle now, and as we climb into the higher drawers, the things we find grow dearer and stranger and rarer, and you may notice the master of the place handling them more carefully, parting with them by the grain rather than the spoonful. Here begin the costly barks and the fragrant rinds, and the woods that came the longest roads of all. Breathe slowly, and let us open the 51st drawer. The 51st drawer holds the true cinnamon, the fine pale bark of the southern isle, the dearest and most delicate of all the warm sweet spices. It is the thin, pale, golden brown inner bark of a particular cinnamon tree that grows finest of all on one great island in the warm southern sea, where the bark is peeled in long thin sheets from the young shoots, dried slowly until it curls into fine fragile quills, light as a feather and pale as old parchment, far thinner and finer than the rough thick quills of the common cassia. The scent of true cinnamon is softer, sweeter, more delicate and more complex than the bolder cassia, with a hint of flowers and of warm honey woven into the spice. It was so prized and so costly that, in the old days, its very source was kept a guarded secret, and wild tales were told of how it was gathered, of great birds that built their nests of cinnamon sticks high on unreachable cliffs, tales spread, no doubt, by the merchants who wished to keep the true and simple source to themselves. In the apothecary, the fine pale quills were kept in a small box behind the brass lock and measured out by the grain. A very little, simmered in milk or wine, made a warm, sweet cordial given to the heavy-hearted to the chilled and convalescent, and to women in the long, low weariness that sometimes follows childbirth. The quiet thing to notice is how light and how fragile these fine pale quills are. So thin that they crumble at a touch, and so light that a whole drawer of them seems to weigh nothing at all, and yet by weight they were once worth more than their weight in many a baser metal, a treasure so delicate that a careless breath could scatter it across the workbench. Let us close the 51st drawer and open the 52nd. The 52nd drawer holds the camphor, the cool white crystal that came from the heart of the great trees of the far eastern isles. It is the clear, white, waxy, crystalline substance drawn from the wood of a tall camphor laurel tree of the warm forests of the Far East, chipped and distilled until it gathers into pale translucent lumps that smell so strong, so cold and clean and penetrating, that to open the drawer is to feel the very inside of the nose tingle, and the eyes prickle, and the head clear in a single sharp breath. It was among the most prized of all the cooling medicines, brought west by the long sea roads at great cost, and a little of it went a very long way, for its scent is so powerful that a single small lump will fill a closed cabinet. In the apothecary, camphor was kept tightly stoppered behind the lock, for its cold, strong breath would fly off and fade if it were left open, and worse, would taint the gentler spices nearby. A very little, dissolved in oil, was rubbed upon the chest of one whose breath was tight and clogged with a deep winter cold, and the cold, clean vapor rising from it seemed to open the closed chest and ease the laboring breath. The same cooling oil was dabbed upon the hot and aching brow of the feverish and rubbed into the aching joint. A little of the crystal was kept among the stored woolens to drive away the moth. The quiet thing to notice is that strange cold breath of the camphor, which seems, almost alone among all these warming spices, to bring not heat but coolness, a clean white chill that clears the head and opens the chest, like a sudden draught of cold mountain air let into a close and stuffy room. Let us close the 52nd drawer and reach for the 53rd. The 53rd drawer holds the nutmeg, the hard fragrant seed of the tree of the Spice Islands, worth at times its weight in gold. It is the hard, brown, egg-shaped seed of a tall evergreen tree that grew, for the whole of the old world's long history, on only a few small islands in the warm Far Eastern Sea, the same fabled Spice Islands that gave the clove, and nowhere else at all. Inside the tree's apricot, like fruit, lies the single seed, and that seed, dried hard and brown, is the nutmeg, which gives up, when it is grated, a warm, sweet, woody, faintly resinous scent, rich and comforting and a little heady, because it came from so few small islands and so impossibly far away. The nutmeg was for long ages one of the most precious things in the whole world, and men crossed oceans and fought wars for the right to so small a brown seed. In the apothecary, each nutmeg was kept whole behind the lock, and grated only as needed, for whole it kept its scent for years, but ground it quickly faded. A little of the freshly grated seed, stirred into warm milk or warm wine, was given for the cold and windy belly, for the loose and watery gut, and above all, for the broken and restless night, for the old healers knew well that a larger dose of nutmeg brings on a heavy drowsiness, and so a careful pinch in a bedtime cup was given to the sleepless to draw them gently down toward rest. The quiet thing to notice is the warm, sweet smell of a nutmeg freshly grated, drifting up from a cup of warm milk on a cold, dark night, a scent so deeply tied to comfort and to sleep that even now it seems to carry within it the very feeling of a warm bed and a closing eye. Let us close the 53rd drawer and open the 54th. The 54th drawer holds the mace, the delicate scarlet lace that wraps the nutmeg, the rarer half of a single seed. It is the thin, lacy, bright scarlet covering that grows wrapped about the nutmeg seed inside the fruit, a delicate net of crimson webbing that is carefully peeled away, pressed flat, and dried until it fades to a warm orange, brown and grows brittle as old paper. It comes from the very same fruit of the very same tree as the nutmeg, and yet it is scarcer still, for each seed wears only its single thin veil of mace, so that it takes a great many trees to gather even a small store of it. Its scent is close to the nutmeg, warm and sweet and woody, but finer, brighter, more delicate, with a hint of pepper and of flowers that the heavier seed does not have. In the apothecary, the dried blades of mace were kept behind the lock with the nutmeg, and used where a finer and more delicate warmth was wanted than the seed alone could give. A little of the ground mace, stirred into a warm posset, was given for the cold and queasy stomach and for the heaviness that follows a great meal, and it was prized in the dishes prepared for the sick and the convalescent, where its gentle, fragrant warmth might wake a failing appetite without troubling a delicate belly. The quiet thing to notice is the strange and lovely fact that this one small fruit, hanging on its branch in a far island grove, holds within it two separate treasures of the cabinet, the hard brown seed and the lacy scarlet veil that wraps it, the nutmeg and the mace, two of the dearest spices in all the world grown together inside a single fruit, the one cradled in the arms of the other. Let us close the 54th drawer and reach for the 55th. The 55th drawer holds the bitter orange peel, the dried golden rind of the sour orange that came west before its sweeter sister. It is the dried peel of the bitter or Seville orange, the older and sourer of the two great oranges, which came west into the warm lands of the south long before the sweet orange we eat today, carried by the merchants of the east and planted in the courtyards of the warm coasts. The fruit itself is too sour and bitter to eat with any pleasure, but the rind, dried hard and curling and a deep golden orange, holds a warm, bitter, intensely fragrant oil that smells of pure sunshine and clean bitterness all at once. In the apothecary, the dried bitter peel was kept on the higher shelf and was a true and useful medicine. A little of the dried peel, steeped in hot water or in wine, made a warm, fragrant, bitter drink that was given to wake a slow and failing appetite, to settle a queasy and bilious stomach, and to lift the low and heavy spirits. For the bright, clean bitterness was thought to cut through the dullness of body and mind alike. The fragrant oil pressed from the peel was prized as a calmer of the troubled nerves and a sweetener of the sick-room air. The quiet thing to notice is how the very bitterness that makes the fruit too sour to eat is the heart of its medicine, for the old healers had learned, across long centuries, that a clean and bracing bitterness on the tongue is one of the surest ways to wake a tired body and call back an appetite that grief or illness had taken away. Let us close the 55th drawer and open the 56th. The 56th drawer holds the dried citron peel, the thick, fragrant rind of the most ancient of all the citrus fruits. It is the thick, knobbled, pale yellow rind of the citron, a great rough lemon-like fruit, the oldest of all the citrus kind to reach the lands of the West, brought from the far East in times so old that the Greeks and the Romans already knew and prized it. The fruit is mostly rind, with little juice within, and it is the thick, fragrant peel that was treasured, candied in honey or sugar into a soft, sweet, golden sweetmeat, or dried hard for the cupboard. The scent of the peel is clean, sweet, and intensely lemony, brighter and softer than the bitter orange, a smell of pure freshness. In the apothecary, the dried and the candied citron peel were kept on the higher shelf. The candied peel was given as a gentle sweet to the convalescent and the weak, both for cheer and for the slow building up of strength, and a little of it was thought to settle a queasy stomach and sweeten a foul breath. A warm infusion of the dried peel was given for the heavy and bilious stomach and to lift a low and dragging spirit. The fragrant peel was carried too, as a small, sweet comfort against the sickness of the long sea voyage. The quiet thing to notice is how very old a friend this fruit has been, known and loved and candied and dried since the very oldest days of the Western world. Its bright, clean lemon scent rising from the cupboards of the ancient and the medieval cooks alike, a small, unbroken thread of fragrance running back through thousands of years. Let us close the 56th drawer and reach for the 57th. The 57th drawer holds the dried lemon peel, the bright golden rind of the fruit that came at last to brighten the cold cupboards of the north. It is the dried peel of the true lemon, that bright golden sour fruit, which came west somewhat later than the citron and the bitter orange, and which slowly grew across the late medieval centuries into one of the most beloved of all the fragrant fruits. The dried peel, curling and golden, holds a clean, bright, sharp, sour, sweet oil, the very smell of freshness and of cleanliness that seems to lift the heart the moment the drawer is opened. In the apothecary, dried lemon peel was kept on the higher shelf, and the fresh fruit, where it could be had, was treasured even more. A warm drink of lemon peel and honey in hot water was given for the sore throat and the winter cough, and to bring a little comfort to the feverish, and the sharp, clean juice, though it came rarely and dear to the cold lands, was prized above almost anything for the strange wasting sickness of the long sea voyage, the scurvy, which the wise old ship's surgeons slowly learned could be held off by the juice of the lemon and its kindred, though it would be long before anyone understood the why of it. The fragrant peel sweetened the sick room and lifted the low spirit. The quiet thing to notice is how the clean, bright scent of the lemon seems, almost more than any other, to carry a feeling of waking and of freshness and of small renewal, so that even on the darkest and most clouded winter morning, the smell of a little dried lemon peel steeping in a warm cup brings, for a moment, a thin, clear thread of summer light into the room. Let us close the 57th drawer and open the 58th. The 58th drawer holds the bergamot peel, the rind of the strange green, gold citrus, whose perfume the whole world would one day know. It is the dried peel of the bergamot, a small, sour, fragrant citrus, green, gold, and not good to eat, grown chiefly along one warm southern coast, whose rind holds an oil of such extraordinary and beautiful fragrance, sweet and sharp and floral and cool all at once, that it would one day become one of the most beloved scents in all the world, woven into fine perfumes, and into the most famous of fragrant teas. In the older apothecary, the bergamot was a rarer and more local treasure, kept on the higher shelf where its precious oil could be guarded. The fragrant oil pressed from the peel was prized as a calmer of the troubled and restless spirit. A few drops in warm water or on a cloth held near the face to ease a fretful and anxious heart, and to soften a sleepless night, for its bright, cool perfume was thought to lift away the dark and heavy mood. The same fragrant oil was used to sweeten the air of the close sick room, and was dabbed, mixed with other oils, upon the temples of the headache and the careworn. The quiet thing to notice is that this small sour fruit, too bitter and too strange ever to be eaten with pleasure, hides within its green, gold rind one of the most beautiful fragrances the earth has ever made. A perfume so lovely that the fruit itself is grown for the scent alone. A reminder that some things in this world are made not to be tasted, but only to be breathed in and quietly loved. Let us close the 58th drawer and reach for the 59th. The 59th drawer holds the quince seed, the small dark seed of the golden hard fruit that yields a soothing balm in water. It is the small, hard, dark brown seed of the quince, that golden, hard, fragrant, downy fruit of the old orchards, too hard and too sour to eat raw, but wonderful when slowly cooked, whose perfume fills a whole room as it ripens on the windowsill. The seed itself seems an unlikely medicine, small and hard and dark, but it holds a quiet secret, for when the seeds are soaked in water they swell and give up a thick, clear, gentle slime, a soothing mucilage that coats and softens whatever it touches. In the apothecary, the dried quince seeds were kept on the higher shelf in a small jar and soaked as needed. The clear, soothing slime drawn from them was given to coat and ease a raw and burning throat, a sore and griping gut, and a hoarse and rasping cough. Much as the fenugreek and the marshmallow were used, a gentle balm spread along the sore and inflamed inside of the body. The same clear slime was smoothed upon cracked and sore lips and chapped and roughened skin, and dabbed upon a sore and reddened eye. The quiet thing to notice is the strange hidden gentleness of so hard a seed, for who, looking at the small dark stone, hard grain, would guess that soaked a while in plain cool water, it would give up so soft and so soothing a balm, as though the hardest and least promising things in the cabinet, given a little patience and a little water, might yield up an unexpected tenderness. Let us close the 59th drawer and open the 60th. The 60th drawer holds the rose hip, the bright red autumn fruit of the wild rose, full of a hidden strengthening virtue. It is the bright scarlet, oval fruit that the wild rose of the hedgerows and the open country leaves behind it in the autumn, after its summer flowers have fallen, glowing red against the bare thorny stems, when little other color is left in the cooling land. The hip is firm and bright and a little tart, with a clean fruity scent, and inside its red flesh lie the small hairy seeds that the children of the country, in a mischief as old as the hedges themselves, would slip down one another's collars for the itching they caused. In the apothecary, the dried rose hips were kept on the higher shelf, and they were valued as a gentle strengthening and refreshing medicine. A warm infusion or a slow, cooked syrup of the bright red hips, sweet and a little tart, was given to the weak and the convalescent, and to children in the cold months, to build them up and to ward off the wasting weariness of a long, hard winter. For the old healers had learned without knowing the reason. That this bright red autumn fruit held some quiet virtue that kept the body strong and well through the dark season when little fresh food could be had. The same sweet syrup was given for the loose gut and the winter cough. The quiet thing to notice is how the wild rose, having given all its beauty to the summer in its brief sweet flowers, keeps back one last gift for the cold and hungry end of the year, hanging its bright red hips along the bare hedge in the very season when the body most needs the quiet strength they hold. Let us close the 60th drawer and reach for the 61st. The 61st drawer holds the dried mulberry, the dark sweet berry of the great spreading tree that fed the worms that spun the silk. It is the dark, sweet, soft fruit of the mulberry tree, dried until it shrinks to a small, dark, sweet morsel, the fruit of a great spreading tree of the warm lands of the east and the south. The very tree whose broad green leaves fed the small worms that spun the precious silk, so that the tree was treasured twice over, once for its fruit and once for its leaves. The dried fruit is dark and intensely sweet, with a deep winey scent, and it kept well through the long months in the apothecary's jar. In the apothecary, the dried mulberries were kept on the higher shelf, and they were given as a gentle sweet medicine for several quiet ends. The dark sweet fruit, or a syrup slowly cooked from it, was given to the weak and the convalescent to build up the blood, and to bring back a little color to the pale and the worn, for the deep dark red of the juice seemed to the old healers a sign of its blood, building virtue. The same sweet syrup, cool and soothing, was given for the sore and inflamed throat and the dry, hard cough, a dark sweet bomb slipping down the raw passage. The quiet thing to notice is how this single tree wove itself so deeply into the life of the old world, its leaves spinning by way of the small patient worms. The shimmering silk that clothed kings and queens, and its dark sweet fruit, dried and stored, building back the strength of the sick and the weak, so that the same tree clothed the body in its finest and healed it in its lowest, all from the one great spreading crown of green. Let us close the 61st drawer and open the 62nd. The 62nd drawer holds the manna, the sweet pale gum that weeps from the bark of the flowering ash, gathered like a small miracle from the tree. It is the pale, sweet, sticky substance that seeps from the cut or wounded bark of a particular flowering ash tree of the warm southern lands, hardening in the air into pale flakes and tears of a soft, sweetish gum that the old people gathered carefully from the bark and called by the same name as the food said to have fallen from heaven upon the wandering people of the oldest stories. The scent of it is faint and sweet, a little like honey grown thin, and the taste is gently, mildly sweet. In the apothecary, manna was kept on the higher shelf, for it came from afar, and was gathered with much patient labor, and it was prized above all as the very gentlest of all the medicines that loosen the bound and sluggish belly. So mild and so kindly was it that it was given freely even to little children, and to women with child, and to the very old and frail, where the stronger purges of the cabinet would have been far too fierce and griping. A sweet and gentle helper that eased the bound body without any pain or violence at all. Dissolved in a little warm milk or warm water, it was a soft, sweet drink rather than a dreaded dose. The quiet thing to notice is the lovely old name itself, borrowed from the sweet food said to have fallen from the morning sky, to feed the hungry wanderers of the desert, given here to this pale sweet gum that weeps so quietly from the bark of a southern tree, as though the old apothecaries, gathering it flake by flake, half believed they were collecting a small and gentle daily miracle from the wood. As we climb a little higher still, the drawers begin to give off the sense, not of the kitchen at all, but of far gardens and of perfumers' rooms, the smell of flowers dried and waters distilled, and dark fragrant pods brought home across the widest oceans. These are the costlier drawers of the cabinet now, and the master opens them slowly. Lean close, and let us draw out the 63rd. The 63rd drawer holds the dried rosebuds, and beside them the small dark bottle of rosewater, the gentlest perfume and the kindest medicine of the whole flowering world. These are the small, tightly furled, dried buds of the old fragrant roses, picked just before they open and dried whole, until they keep their shape and their soft sweet scent through all the year, and with them the precious rosewater, the clear fragrant water, distilled from heaps of fresh rose petals in the great copper stills of the east. The scent of both is the scent of the rose itself, soft and sweet and deep and a little cool, the most beloved of all flower smells, and the rosewater of the finest stills of Persia was carried west at no small cost and treasured in every well-stocked cupboard. In the apothecary, the dried buds and the rosewater were kept on the higher shelf and used very widely and very tenderly. The cool fragrant rosewater was dabbed upon the hot brow of the feverish and upon the tired and aching eye, and a little of it was given in a warm drink to settle and to gladden a heavy and grieving heart, for the rose was thought, above almost all things, to comfort the low spirit. A syrup of rose petals, sweet and fragrant and a little cooling, was given for the sore throat and the loose gut, and to soothe the fretful and the wakeful towards sleep. The quiet thing to notice is how the same flower that has stood in every land and every age, for love itself, was also one of the gentlest and most trusted of all the comforting medicines, so that to be tended with the rose was at once to be cared for and, in some small wordless way, to be loved, the medicine and the meaning bound together in one sweet cool fragrance. Let us close the 63rd drawer and open the 64th. The 64th drawer holds the orange flower water and the dried orange blossom, the white spring flowers of the orange tree caught and kept in a fragrant water. These are the small, white, waxy, intensely fragrant flowers of the orange tree, gathered in the brief, sweet days of the southern spring, when the whole grove stands clouded in white bloom, and the air, for half a mile around, is heavy with their perfume. Dried whole for the cupboard, or distilled into the clear, sweet, faintly bitter, wonderfully fragrant orange flower water. The scent is one of the loveliest of all, sweet and green and honeyed and cool, a perfume so beautiful that brides have worn the white blossom in their hair since times beyond remembering. In the apothecary, the dried blossom and the orange flower water were kept on the higher shelf and prized as gentle calmers of the restless heart and the wakeful night. A little of the fragrant water in a warm drink was given to soothe the fretful and anxious spirit, to quiet the fluttering and overwrought heart, and to draw the sleepless gently down toward rest. For its sweet, cool perfume was thought to loosen the grip of worry and to soften the hard edges of a troubled mind. The same fragrant water cooled the feverish brow and sweetened the close sick-room air. The quiet thing to notice is the brevity of the thing that gives this medicine, for the orange tree wears its clouds of white bloom for only a few short days of the spring before the petals fall, and yet the patient stills of the south catch that fleeting perfume and hold it clear and sweet in a small bottle through all the long year, so that on a cold winter night the sleepless might breathe, from a single drop, the whole fragrance of a southern grove in spring. Let us close the 64th drawer and reach for the 65th. The 65th drawer holds the lavender, kept here not as the garden herb, but as a treasured aromatic of the cabinet, its blue buds and its precious distilled oil. We know the small blue, grey shrub of the southern hills well enough from the garden, but in the spice cabinet the lavender takes a higher and more honoured place, its dried violet buds kept in a clean jar, and its precious distilled oil, drawn drop by drop from great heaps of the flowering tops, guarded in a small, dark bottle on the high shelf. The scent of it is clean and sweet, and herbal and cool, with that calming softness that everyone knows, and the very name of it comes from the old word for washing, for the people of Rome scented their bathwater with it. In the apothecary, lavender and its oil were among the most trusted of all the calmers of the troubled head and the wakeful night. A few of the dried buds in a small linen bag were tucked among the bed linens and beneath the pillow of one who could not sleep, that the soft sweet scent might ease them down toward rest. A drop or two of the precious oil, rubbed into the temples, was given for the megrim headache and the giddy and faint, and a little of it, much diluted, was rubbed upon the chest of one whose breath was tight. The quiet thing to notice is how this one small scent has stood across so many centuries and so many lands, for calm and for cleanness and for rest, so that even now, to walk past a kitchen door at dusk in the lands where it grows and catch the scent of a little posy of it hung above the lintel is to feel, all at once and without any reason given, that the house beyond is a quiet and a peaceful one. Let us close the 65th drawer and open the 66th. The 66th drawer holds the cassia buds, the small dried flower, buds of the cinnamon, cousin tree, sweet little cloves of the bark-made flower. These are the small, hard, dried, clove-shaped flower, buds of the cassia tree, the same tree whose inner bark gives the common cinnamon, gathered young and dried until they look like tiny rounded cloves, each on its little stalk. Their scent is warm and sweet and cinnamon-like, gentler and rounder than the bark, with a hint of the clove in it, a soft warm sweetness folded into a small hard bud. They came west along the same long roads as the cinnamon bark, and were kept as a finer and more curious form of the same warm spice. In the apothecary, cassia buds were kept on the higher shelf and used much as the bark, but where a gentler and more rounded sweetness was wanted. A few of the buds, simmered in milk or wine, gave a warm sweet drink for the cold and windy belly and the queasy stomach, and they were prized in the warm spiced cordials given to the chilled and the convalescent and the heavy-hearted. The fragrant buds were chewed, too, to sweeten a foul breath and to warm a cold mouth. The quiet thing to notice is how the same great tree gives to the cabinet so many separate small treasures, the rough quills of its inner bark, the broad green oil, rich leaf we met before, and now these small sweet flower buds, each a different face of the one warm spice, as though the tree had taken care to offer something for every shelf and every purse. The bark for the rich, the leaf for the poor, and these curious little buds for the one who loved a finer and a rarer thing. Let us close the 66th drawer and reach for the 67th. The 67th drawer holds the areca nut, the hard-streaked seed that the peoples of the warm East chewed for waking and for warmth. It is the hard, round, marbled brown and tan seed of a tall, slender palm of the warm, wet lands of the East and the Southern Isles, sliced thin and dried and chewed in those lands. Wrapped in a fragrant leaf with a touch of lime, in a custom as old and as widespread there as any in the world. The chewing of it stains the mouth a deep red and gives a gentle warming, waking lift, a mild quickening of the spirits much loved by the working people of those lands across the long hours of labor. It came west only in small amounts and was little understood in the cold far cupboards, more a curiosity of the traveller's tale than a common medicine. Yet the apothecaries of the warm East knew it well and kept it among their useful things. There, a little of the dried sliced nut was given for the sluggish and windy belly, and, above all, against the worms that troubled the gut, for it was one of their oldest and most trusted worming medicines. The same warming, waking chew was used to steady a tired body and to dull a slow hunger across a long day of work. The quiet thing to notice is how a small hard seed could become so woven into the daily life and the very hospitality of half the warm world, offered to a guest at the door as a sign of welcome, much as another people might offer bread or tea, so that this humble palm nut carried, far beyond any medicine, the whole warmth of an old and gracious custom of greeting. Let us close the 67th drawer and open the 68th. The 68th drawer holds the marigold petals, the bright orange, gold flowers the poorer cupboards kept as a gentle stand in for the costly saffron. These are the bright, golden orange ray petals of the common marigold of the cottage garden, that cheerful, sturdy flower that blooms from spring to the first frost and turns its bright face to follow the sun across the day. Dried, the petals keep much of their warm gold color, and they carry a faint, fresh, slightly resinous scent. The poorer households and the humbler cupboards, who could never dream of the costly saffron of the locked drawers, kept the dried marigold petals as a kindly stand in, for a pinch of them would tint a broth, or a posset a warm cheerful gold, much as the saffron did, at a tiny fraction of the price, and so the flower earned its old country name of the poor man's saffron. In the apothecary, the dried petals were kept on the higher shelf and used as a true medicine in their own right, not merely as a color. A warm infusion of the petals was given to comfort a heavy and grieving heart and to gladden the low spirits, much as the saffron was, and a salve of the flowers, simmered in lard or oil, was one of the most beloved of all the healing balms, smoothed upon cuts and grazes and slow, healing sores and chapped and roughened skin, for the marigold was trusted above almost anything to clean a wound and quicken its closing. The quiet thing to notice is how the humble garden flower, blooming so freely and so cheaply by every cottage door, gave to the poor a small share of the comforts that the costly saffron gave the rich. The same warm gold in the cup, the same lifting of the heavy heart, so that even the poorest sick bed might be brightened by a little of the sun caught in a dried flower. Let us close the 68th drawer and reach for the 69th. The 69th drawer holds the safflower, the false saffron, the orange, red flowers of the thistle, like plant that mimicked the golden spice. These are the bright orange-red, slender petals of a tall, prickly, thistle-like plant of the warm, dry lands of the East and the Mediterranean. Grown both for these petals and for the oil pressed from its seeds. The dried petals look, to a quick and hopeful eye, much like the precious threads of the true saffron, and they will tint water and broth a warm yellow, orange. And so the safflower was the great pretender of the spice trade, sold sometimes honestly as itself, and sometimes, by the less honest merchant, mixed in among the true saffron to stretch that costly spice and cheat the unwary buyer, so that the careful apothecary learned to test his saffron well. Yet the safflower had honest uses of its own. In the apothecary, the dried petals were kept on the higher shelf, and a warm infusion of them was given to bring out a slow sweat in the early stages of a fever, and to bring on a delayed and sluggish cycle in women. And the same warm drink was thought to gladden the heart a little, though never so deeply as the true saffron. The oil pressed from the seeds was a clean, light oil for the skin and for the cooking pot. The quiet thing to notice is the long, quiet history of deception folded into this one bright flower, for through all the centuries that men paid the price of gold for the true saffron, the safflower stood ready, cheaper and bolder, and not so very different to the careless eye. A constant small temptation to the dishonest seller, and a constant small test of the careful and the wise. Let us close the 69th drawer and open the 70th. The 70th drawer holds the anato, the brick red seed from across the Western Ocean that stained whatever it touched a glowing orange, gold. These are the small, hard, triangular, brick-red seeds of a shrubby tree of the warm lands of the New World across the Western Ocean, each seed wrapped in a thin, waxy, intensely red-orange coat that stains the fingers and the water, and the food a glowing warm orange, gold at the lightest touch. The older peoples of those warm lands had used it since times beyond reckoning, painting their bodies with its bright red paste for beauty and for protection from the biting insects and the burning sun. And they brought the knowledge of it to the first traders who came across the great ocean. The seed itself has only a faint earthy scent, for it was valued not for smell, but for that astonishing warm color. In the apothecary, where this newcomer found a place, anato was kept on the higher shelf, and used both to color other medicines a cheerful warm gold, and as a gentle medicine in its own right. A wash of the red seed was used by the older peoples of its homeland upon burns and upon the skin troubled by the sun and the insect, to cool and to soothe and to protect, and these uses traveled with the seed. A little was taken, too, for the sluggish digestion. The quiet thing to notice is the sheer glowing strength of the color locked into so small a seed, for a single pinch of the brick red grains, stirred into a pot of plain water, will turn the whole of it the warm orange, gold of a low evening sun, as though the bright fierce light of the warm lands where it grew had somehow been gathered up and folded away inside each tiny red seed. Let us close the 70th drawer and reach for the 71st. The 71st drawer holds the vanilla, the dark fragrant pod from across the Western Ocean, the most beloved sweet perfume that the New World ever gave the Old. It is the long, slender, dark brown, wrinkled, glistening pod of a climbing orchid of the warm forests of the New World across the Western Ocean, where the older peoples had long known and prized it, curing the green pods through many slow weeks of sweating and drying until they darken and shrink and grow heavy with a deep, sweet, warm, flowery fragrance that is one of the most beloved scents in all the world. It came east across the great ocean as one of the wonders of the new lands, costly and rare, for each pod must be cured by hand through a long and patient labor. In the apothecary, where so precious a thing could be kept at all, the dark, fragrant pods were guarded on the high shelf, often in a stoppered jar where their sweet scent could be held close. A little of the pod, steeped in warm milk or wine, gave a deep, sweet, fragrant drink that was given to lift a low and heavy spirit and to gladden the grieving heart, much as the rose and the saffron were, for the warm, sweet perfume was thought to comfort the very soul. The same fragrant drink was given to the weak and the convalescent to revive a failing appetite, and to bring a little pleasure back to one worn down by long illness. The quiet thing to notice is how a scent we now meet so often and so cheaply, the warm, sweet smell of vanilla in every kitchen and every sweet thing, was once a costly wonder from the far side of the world. Each dark pod cured by hand through long, patient weeks and carried across an ocean, so that to breathe it was to breathe something rare and dear and full of the mystery of distant lands. Let us close the 71st drawer and open the 72nd. The 72nd drawer holds the cacao, the dark, bitter bean from across the Western Ocean that the old peoples drank as a medicine and a sacred thing long before it was ever as sweet. These are the dark, roasted, fragrant beans of a small understory tree of the warm, wet forests of the New World across the Western Ocean, where the older peoples had prized them so highly that they used them as money and drank them, ground and bitter, and frothed with water and spice, as a sacred and a strengthening drink reserved for the great and the brave. The roasted bean carries a deep, dark, rich, bitter, fragrant scent, warm and a little earthy, quite without the sweetness we now wrap around it, for in those first days it was drunk dark and bitter and strong. It came east across the great ocean as one of the marvels of the new lands, and the apothecaries of the old world took it up at once, not as a sweet at all, but as a serious and strengthening medicine. In the apothecary, the ground bean was kept on the high shelf, and a warm, dark, bitter drink made of it was given to revive the weak and the weary, to put strength and spirit back into one worn down by long illness or hard labor, and to lift a low and dragging heart, for it was found to waken warm and quicken the tired body in a way few other things could. The quiet thing to notice is how very far this dark bitter bean has traveled, not only across the great ocean, but across the whole idea of what it was for, from a sacred bitter drink of warriors and kings, frothed cold and dark and spiced, to the gentle sweet comfort we now know, the same bean carrying, beneath all the sweetness we have added, that old deep strengthening warmth the first peoples drank it for. Let us close the 72nd drawer and reach for the 73rd. The 73rd drawer holds the chili, the small fierce fruit of the new world, whose fire would one day spread to the kitchens of the whole earth. It is the small, dried, wrinkled, deep red fruit of a low bushy plant of the warm lands of the New World across the Western Ocean, holding within it a fire fiercer and stranger than any pepper the Old World had ever known, a burning heat that floods the mouth and brings the sweat to the brow and the tears to the eye, and that lingers long after every other taste has faded. The older peoples of its homeland had grown and loved it since times beyond reckoning, and when it came east across the great ocean it spread, with astonishing speed, into the kitchens of nearly every warm land of the old world, until whole peoples could scarcely imagine their food without it. The scent of the dried fruit is sharp and fruity and faintly smoky, with the heat hidden beneath. In the apothecary, the dried chili was kept on the high shelf and handled with care, for a little went a very long way. A tiny amount, taken with food or in warm wine, was given to wake a cold and sluggish digestion, to bring the blood up warm in a body chilled to the bone, and to start a slow sweat in the early stages of a fever. A warming plaster of the ground fruit, used most carefully, was laid upon the aching joint and the cold stiff back to draw the blood up and ease the deep, cold ache. The quiet thing to notice is the strange swiftness with which this small, fierce fruit conquered the warm world, leaping from kitchen to kitchen across whole continents in a few short generations, until peoples who had never in all their long history known such fire could no longer remember a time before it. A small red flame carried round the earth and welcomed everywhere it went. Let us close the 73rd drawer and open the 74th, the last of this row of far gardens. The 74th drawer holds the licorice root, the sweet, dark, woody root, whose sweetness outlasts almost everything in the cabinet. It is the long, fibrous, yellow, fleshed root of a low, feathery legume of the warm, dry lands of the east and the south, dug and dried until it is hard and woody, and famous above all for its sweetness, for the root holds a sweetness many times that of common sugar, deep and lingering, and a little earthy, that fills the mouth long after the woody fibre is set down. The plant has been gathered and traded since the very oldest times, and roots of it were laid, the old story says, in the tombs of the ancient kings of Egypt. The scent of the dried root is faint and sweet and woody. In the apothecary, dried licorice root was kept on the higher shelf and used very widely and very kindly, for it was one of the great soothers of the cabinet. A decoction of the chopped root, sweet and dark, was given for the sore and raw and rasping throat and the dry hard cough, coating and soothing the inflamed passage with its sweetness, and the same sweet drink was given to ease a sour and burning stomach, and to soften a sharp medicine that would otherwise be hard to swallow, for a little licorice made many a bitter dose go down. The chewed root itself cleaned the teeth and sweetened the breath. The quiet thing to notice is the deep and lasting sweetness of the thing, a sweetness drawn not from any fruit or flower, but from a hard, dry, woody root pulled from the dusty ground, as though the plant had hidden its honey, not in a bloom held up to the bees, but deep down in the dark earth, where only the patient digger would ever find it. And now we come to the part of the cabinet that the apprentice may not open, for here is the small brass lock, and only the master of the place carries the key to it. Above this line the drawers hold the rarest, and the strangest things of all, the golden threads and the grey lumps drawn from the sea, and the dark resins gathered drop by drop from far desert trees, things worth more by the ounce than a poor man might earn in a year, kept under lock not from greed alone, but because so little of each was ever to be had. Hear the small click of the key, and the soft slide of the lock drawing back, and let us open very carefully now the 75th drawer. The 75th drawer holds the saffron, The golden threads drawn one by one from the heart of a small autumn flower, the dearest spice the world has ever weighed. These are the slender, deep red, gold threads taken from the very heart of a small purple autumn crocus, a flower no larger than a thumb, each bloom holding only 3 of these precious threads, so that it takes many thousands of flowers, gathered by hand in the cool autumn mornings, and the threads picked out one by one, to make even a small store of the spice, which is why, of all the things in this whole great cabinet, the saffron has always been the dearest by weight. The scent of it is deep and warm and honeyed, with a hint of hay and of the sea, and a single thread will tint a whole cup of water a glowing golden color and lend it that unmistakable rich savor. In the apothecary, the saffron was kept in a small, tightly stoppered glass behind the lock, and parted with thread by counted thread. A few threads dropped into warm water or warm milk made a glowing golden cup that was given to the heavy-hearted and the grieving, to those sunk in the long, low melancholy that follows great sorrow or hard illness, and to women in the dark weariness that sometimes comes after childbirth. For the saffron was trusted above almost everything to lift and to gladden a fallen spirit. The same warm golden cup was given to the convalescent to revive a failing strength. The quiet thing to notice is the sheer patience and tenderness folded into so small a pinch. The thousands of small purple flowers opened in the cool dawn, the careful fingers picking out the 3 small threads from each, so that a single warm golden cup given to comfort a grieving heart holds within it the gathered mornings of a whole autumn field and the patient labor of many quiet hands. Let us close the 75th drawer and open the 76th. The 76th drawer holds the ambergris, the strange grey, gold lump given up by the deep sea, one of the rarest and most mysterious treasures of all. It is a strange, waxy, grey or pale golden lump, light enough to float, that was found, very rarely and quite by chance, washed up upon the shores of certain seas or floating far out upon the open water, and whose true origin was, for the whole of the old world's long history, a complete and wondrous mystery, so that men guessed it was a sea, foam-hardened, or a fungus of the deep, or the dung of some great unknown creature of the ocean. We now understand it comes from the great whales of the deep, but to the old apothecaries it was simply a gift the sea gave. Almost never to the lucky finder who walked the right shore on the right grey morning. Fresh from the sea it smells foul, but aged in the air and the salt it ripens into one of the most beautiful and lasting fragrances ever known, deep, warm, sweet, musky, and faintly of the sea, a scent that cumes for an extraordinary time. Because it was so rare and so dear, the ambergris was kept behind the lock in a small box and used by the smallest crumb. In the apothecary, a tiny piece, dissolved in warm wine, was given as a great restorative to revive the fainting and the deeply exhausted, to warm and quicken a failing heart, and to lift a spirit sunk too low for any gentler thing to reach. And it was woven, too, into the very greatest and costliest of the compound medicines of the cabinet. The quiet thing to notice is how this most precious of treasures came not by any labor of man at all, neither grown nor gathered nor traded for, but only found by the rarest chance, lying among the wrack on a lonely shore at dawn, a small grey gift the deep sea gave up perhaps once in a finder's whole long life. Let us close the 76th drawer and reach for the 77th. The 77th drawer holds the musk, the dark, fragrant grain drawn from a small shy deer of the high, cold mountains, the strongest perfume the old world knew. It is the dark, fragrant substance taken from a small gland of a shy little deer of the high, cold mountains and forests of the Far East, dried into dark grains and powders that carry a scent so deep and so powerful, so warm and animal and lasting, that a single grain will perfume a whole room and cling to a cloth for years, growing softer and sweeter as it ages. It came west from the high, cold lands of the East along the longest roads of all, and it was so dear and so concentrated that it was kept behind the lock and used by the single grain. In the apothecary, the musk was prized as one of the very greatest of the restoratives and the calmers of the troubled nerves. A tiny amount, dissolved in warm wine, was given to revive the fainting and the failing, to steady a fluttering and frightened heart, and to bring back to themselves those sunk in the deep, low weakness that follows a grave illness, for its strong, warm scent was thought to reach and rouse the very spirits of life when nothing gentler could. It was a chief and costly ingredient in the greatest of the compound medicines. The quiet thing to notice is the strange and almost troubling power of so small a thing, for a single dark grain, no larger than a peppercorn, holds a fragrance so vast and so lasting that it can fill a room for a day and a cloth for a decade, as though all the warm life of the small shy deer of the cold high forests had been gathered and concentrated into one tiny dark and potent seed of scent. Let us close the 77th drawer and open the 78th. The 78th drawer holds the civet, the soft, fragrant paste drawn from a small, fierce creature of the warm lands, kept like musk for the rarest needs. It is the soft, dark, waxy, intensely fragrant paste taken from a gland of a small, fierce cat-like creature of the warm lands of Africa and the East, gathered and dried into a substance that, like the musk, smells almost foul and overpowering when fresh and strong, but mellows when greatly diluted and aged into a deep, warm, sweet, musky fragrance of remarkable richness and lasting power. It came west along the warm trade roads and was kept, like the musk and the ambergris, behind the lock and used by the merest trace, for a very little of it carried very far. In the apothecary, civet was prized chiefly as one of the great warming restoratives, and as a base that lent depth and lasting power to the finest perfumes and the costliest medicines. A tiny trace, greatly diluted in warm wine, was given to revive the fainting and the deeply spent, to warm and steady a failing heart, and to rouse the spirits of one sunk too low for gentler help. More often it was woven, in the smallest measure, into the greatest of the compound electuaries of the cabinet, where its deep, warm scent and its rousing power joined those of the musk and the ambergris. The quiet thing to notice is how the old apothecaries, in their long search for the strongest things that might call a fading life back to itself, turned again and again to these deep animal scents, the musk and the ambergris and the civet, as though they sensed that what could rouse the body most powerfully was not the bright, clean smell of a flower or a seed, but something deeper and warmer and more living, drawn from the warm bodies of the creatures of the world. Let us close the 78th drawer and reach for the 79th. The 79th drawer holds the spikenard, the fragrant root the old books called nard, the precious ointment of the oldest stories. It is the fragrant root and the matted woolly stem, base of a small plant of the high cold meadows of the great mountains to the north of India, dug and dried and pressed for an oil of a deep, warm, earthy, mossy, faintly sweet fragrance, heavy and lasting and a little wild. The very perfume named in the oldest and most sacred of stories, the costly ointment kept in its sealed alabaster jar that was poured out, in the famous tale, upon the feet of one beloved teacher as a sign of the deepest honor. It came west from the high cold roof of the world, along the longest of all the spice roads, and it was so dear that in the old days a small jar of it was reckoned a princely gift. In the apothecary the dried root and the precious oil were kept behind the lock and used in the smallest measure. A little of the oil was rubbed into the troubled temples to calm a frantic and sleepless mind, and to ease a frightened and fluttering heart. And a trace of it was given in warm wine as a deep calmer of the overwrought spirit and a steadier of the trembling nerves. The fragrant root was woven into the greatest of the calming and restoring compounds. The quiet thing to notice is how this single fragrance carries within it, for anyone who has heard the old stories, so deep a weight of meaning. The sealed jar and the costly ointment, and the act of pouring it all out at once, holding nothing back, as the very picture of a love that does not count the cost, so that to breathe the warm mossy scent of the nard is to breathe a little of that oldest and most generous of gestures. Let us close the 79th drawer and open the 80th. The 80th drawer holds the costus root, the warm fragrant root of the high Kashmir meadows, a treasured perfume and medicine of the long roads. It is the thick, fragrant, brown root of a tall, stout plant of the high cold meadows of the great northern mountains, dug and dried until it gives up a warm, rich, woody, slightly sweet and slightly animal scent that grows deeper as it ages. A fragrance prized both as a perfume and as a medicine across the whole reach of the old trade roads, from the high mountain valleys where it grew all the way to the courts of the far west. It was a costly thing, carried the longest of roads, and so it was kept behind the lock with the other treasures of the high cold lands. In the apothecary, the dried root was used both for the body and for the air. A little of the powdered root, given in warm wine, was a warming medicine for the cold and windy belly, and a reviver of the weak and the chilled, and it was thought, like so many of these deep warm scents, to lift a low and heavy spirit. The fragrant root was burned too, as a sweet smoke to cleanse and perfume the air of a close room, and to drive away the bad airs that the old healers feared in times of sickness. The quiet thing to notice is how many of the rarest and most precious things on these high locked shelves came, like the spikenard and now the costus, from the same high cold meadows of the great northern mountains, as though that one remote and lofty country, hard to reach and harder still to leave, were a kind of secret garden of the dearest fragrances, sending down its costly roots along the long roads to perfume and to heal a world that would never see its high cold flowering meadows at all. Let us close the 80th drawer and reach for the 81st. The 81st drawer holds the sweet flag, the fragrant root the old books called calamus, the spice of the marsh edge with the warm spicy scent. It is the long, creeping, fragrant root of a tall reed, like plant of the marsh edges and the slow stream margins, growing in the wet shallows of many lands. Its sword, like leaves standing up green from the water, and its hidden root, dug from the mud and dried, giving up a warm, spicy, sweet, faintly bitter scent, a little like cinnamon and a little like ginger, that fills the still room when the drawer is opened. It has been gathered and prized since the very oldest times, named among the sweet spices of the oldest sacred writings, and traded across the whole old world. In the apothecary, the dried sweet flag root was kept on the higher shelf and used as a warming and settling medicine, and as a sweet fragrance. A little of the chopped root, steeped in warm water or wine, was given for the cold and sluggish stomach, for the windy and griping belly, and to wake a slow and failing appetite, for it was one of the trusted warmers of the cold digestion. A small piece of the root was chewed slowly to sweeten a foul breath, to ease a sore throat, and, the old country folk said, to clear and steady the head and lift a dull and heavy mind. The fragrant root was strewn, too, upon the floors of churches and great halls on feast days, so that the feet of those who walked there would crush it and release its sweet, spicy scent into the air. The quiet thing to notice is that of all these costly treasures of the high locked shelves, gathered from far mountains and far seas, this one fragrant spice grew quietly in the wet marsh edges of many a near and homely land, dug from the cold mud of a local fen, and yet gave a scent so warm and so sweet and so spicy that it stood proudly among the dearest perfumes of the world. Let us close the 81st drawer and open the 82nd. The 82nd drawer holds the frankincense, the pale golden tears of resin from the desert trees of the south, the smoke of temples and the medicine of kings. These are the pale, golden, translucent tears of resin that weep from the cut bark of a gnarled and twisted desert tree of the dry, hot lands of the south and the east, gathered as they harden in the burning sun into small, clear amber drops, and prized across the whole of the old world above almost every other fragrant thing, so that it was carried by long caravans across the great deserts and was named, in the oldest and most famous of stories, among the precious gifts brought to a newborn king. The scent of it, when the resin is warmed or burned, is clean, sweet, balsamic, and faintly of citrus and of pine, a high clear fragrance that seems to lift and cleanse the very air, the scent of temples and of holy places in every land that knew it. In the apothecary, the golden tears were kept behind the lock and used both as a medicine and as a sweet cleansing smoke. A little of the resin, dissolved in warm wine, was given to ease a sore and griping gut, and to steady a troubled spirit, and a wash of it was used upon slow, healing wounds and sores, for it was thought to clean the wound and quicken its closing. Above all, the resin was burned upon hot coals, so that its clean, sweet smoke might rise and cleanse the air of a sick room and the heavy air of a close and crowded place. The quiet thing to notice is how the rising of that pale, fragrant smoke has meant, in every land and every age that knew it, a moment set apart and made holy, so that to burn a few golden tears of frankincense in a dim room was, for the old apothecary, as much an act of quiet reverence as of healing, the medicine of the body and the cleansing of the soul rising together in the same sweet curl of smoke. Let us close the 82nd drawer and reach for the 83rd. The 83rd drawer holds the myrrh, the dark, bitter resin of the desert thorn, the brother of the frankincense, and the spice of mourning and of healing. It is the dark, reddish, brown, bitter resin that weeps from the wounded bark of a low, thorny desert tree of the same hot, dry lands of the south, and the east that gave the frankincense, gathered as it hardens into dark, glistening lumps and tears, and prized, like its golden brother, across the whole of the old world, named beside the frankincense in the same famous old story of the gifts brought to the newborn king. The scent of myrrh, when it is warmed or burned, is deep, warm, bitter, balsamic, and a little smoky. Heavier and sadder than the high, clear frankincense, a fragrance long bound up with mourning and with the anointing of the dead, and yet for all that a powerful and trusted medicine of the living. In the apothecary, the dark, bitter resin was kept behind the lock and used widely for its great cleansing and healing power. A little of the resin, dissolved in warm wine or water, was given for the foul and ulcerated mouth and the loose and bleeding gum, used as a wash that drew the slack tissues tight and cleaned the sore, and the same wash was smoothed upon slow, healing wounds and sores, for myrrh was reckoned among the very best of all the cleansers and healers of the wounded flesh. A little was given, too, to steady a griping gut. The quiet thing to notice is how these two desert brothers, the golden frankincense and the dark myrrh, weeping from their two thorny trees in the same burning southern sands, have walked together through all the old stories and all the old medicine, the bright sweet one and the dark bitter one, the smoke of joy and the smoke of mourning, the two of them so often named in a single breath that one can scarcely think of the one without the other rising in the mind beside it. Let us close the 83rd drawer and open the 84th. The 84th drawer holds the storax, the sweet dark balsam that flows from the wounded bark of the sweet gum tree, soft and fragrant as warm honey. It is the soft, dark, fragrant, sticky balsam that flows from the cut or wounded bark of certain sweet gum trees of the warm lands of the eastern Mediterranean and beyond, gathered as a thick, dark resin with a warm, sweet, balsamic scent, a little like honey, and a little like vanilla, and a little like the cinnamon, deep and rich and lasting. It was prized across the old world as a sweet perfume and a cleansing smoke and a gentle medicine, and it traveled the warm trade roads to find its place among the treasures of the locked cabinet. In the apothecary, the dark sweet balsam was kept behind the lock and used both for the chest and for the air. A little of the balsam, dissolved in warm wine, or its sweet smoke breathed in from a few drops set upon hot coals, was given to ease the tight and laboring chest and the stubborn winter cough, for the warm balsamic vapor was thought to loosen and soothe the clogged and inflamed breath. The same balsam was smoothed upon slow, healing sores and was burned as a sweet, cleansing smoke to perfume a close and heavy room. The quiet thing to notice is the warm, honeyed sweetness of the scent, gentler and softer than the high frankincense and the dark myrrh, so that of all the fragrant resins on these locked shelves, the storax is perhaps the most comforting and the most homely, a balsam that smells less of the temple and the tomb and more of warm honey and warm spice, and a gently smouldering hearth. Let us close the 84th drawer and reach for the 85th. The 85th drawer holds the benzoin, the pale sweet gum the old apothecaries called gum benjamin, fragrant as vanilla and almonds together. It is the pale, brittle, fragrant gum resin that weeps from the cut bark of a tall tree of the warm forests of the Far East and the southern Isles, gathered as it hardens into pale tears and lumps that give up, when warmed or burned, a wonderfully sweet, warm, balsamic scent, a little like vanilla and a little like the warm almond, soft and comforting and lasting. It came west along the long sea roads at no small cost and earned its homely old name, Gum Benjamin, a worn-down form of an older and longer foreign word that the Western tongue could not easily keep. In the apothecary, the pale sweet gum was kept behind the lock and prized for the chest, for the skin, and for the air. Dissolved in spirit, it made a fragrant tincture that was added to hot water, so that its sweet warm vapor might be breathed in to ease the tight chest and the stubborn cough, a use that has never been forgotten. The same fragrant tincture, smoothed upon cracked and chapped and sore skin, was thought to soothe and to heal it, and a little was added to fragrant salves and ointments to lend them both scent and a keeping power, for benzoin was found to slow the turning rancid of the oils it was mixed into. The quiet thing to notice is that warm sweet vanilla and almond scent, so soft and so comforting, rising from a steaming cup into the face of one who could not breathe easily in the night. A fragrant healing breath that carried, even in the midst of illness, something of the smell of warm sweet baking and of small kind comforts. Let us close the 85th drawer and open the 86th, the last of this locked row of resins. The 86th drawer holds the labdanum, the dark sticky gum gathered from the rock, rows of the hot hillsides scraped, the old story says, from the beards of the grazing goats. It is the dark, sticky, fragrant gum that the rock, rose, a low shrub of the hot, dry, stony hillsides of the lands about the Mediterranean, gives off from its leaves in the burning heat of summer, a gum so sticky and so fragrant that it clings to whatever brushes against the shrub, and the old story, half true and wholly charming, tells that the people of those hillsides first gathered it by combing it from the long beards and the matted coats of the goats that grazed among the rock, roses through the hot afternoons, scraping the dark fragrant gum from the animal's hair into small dark cakes. The scent of labdanum is deep, warm, sweet, dark and balsamic, with a hint of amber and of leather and of the warm hillside itself, rich and lasting and a little wild. In the apothecary, the dark fragrant gum was kept behind the lock and used as a warming medicine and a sweet cleansing smoke. A little of the gum, dissolved in warm wine, was given to ease a tight chest and a griping gut, and to steady a troubled spirit, and the same gum, burned upon hot coals, gave a deep sweet smoke to cleanse and perfume a close and heavy room. The quiet thing to notice is the homely and earthy way this rich dark perfume first came to be gathered, not by any grand labor, but by patient hillside folk combing it from the warm coats of their goats at the end of a long hot grazing day, so that one of the deepest and most treasured of all the fragrant gums of the locked cabinet began its long journey to the perfumer, and the apothecary tangled in the beard of a wandering goat upon a sun-baked Mediterranean hill. We have only a little way left to climb now, and the drawers we have yet to open are the very highest and the very rarest of all, kept on the topmost shelf, where the master must stand upon the old cedar step to reach them. Things so dear and so strange that some of them were spoken of more often than they were ever truly seen. Steady yourself and breathe slowly, and let us reach up now to the 87th drawer. The 87th drawer holds the agar wood, the dark fragrant heartwood the East called the wood of the gods, the most precious wood in all the world. It is the dark, heavy, resin, soaked heartwood of a certain tree of the warm, wet forests of the Far East, and it is one of the strangest treasures of the whole cabinet, for the plain wood of the living tree is pale and worthless, and only when the tree is wounded and a slow infection creeps into the heartwood, over many long years, does the tree flood that wood with a dark fragrant resin to defend itself, so that the precious agar wood is born only out of long injury and slow patient healing. Dark and heavy and shot through with fragrant resin. The scent of it, when it is warmed or burned, is deep, warm, sweet, woody, and complex beyond easy telling. A fragrance so prized across the whole of the East that the finest pieces were worth far more than their weight in gold, and were treasured by emperors. In the apothecary of the lands that knew it, the dark, fragrant wood was kept behind the lock and used most sparingly. A little of the wood, warmed in wine, was given as a deep, warming restorative to revive the failing, and the deeply spent, to steady a troubled and fluttering heart, and to lift a spirit sunk too low for any gentler help. And small fragrant shavings of it were burned, so that the deep sweet smoke might calm the restless mind and ease the wakeful toward rest. The quiet thing to notice is the strange and almost tender truth of how this most precious of all woods comes to be, born not in the health of the tree, but in its long wounding, the fragrant resin welling up year after year to heal an old hurt, so that the most treasured fragrance in all the world is, in the end, the smell of a long and patient healing of a wound, a thing made beautiful only by the slow mending of a deep injury. Let us close the 87th drawer and open the 88th. The 88th drawer holds the sandalwood, the cool fragrant heartwood of the slow growing tree of the south, calm and sweet as the inside of a quiet temple. It is the pale, close-grained, fragrant heartwood of a small, slow-growing tree of the warm, dry lands of southern India and the isles beyond, a wood so deeply and so lastingly fragrant that even a small piece, carved or powdered or ground to a paste, gives up for many years a soft, sweet, warm, creamy, woody scent, cool and calming and gentle, quite unlike the heady richness of the agar wood, a quiet fragrance that seems to slow the very breath. The tree grows so slowly, and the fragrant heartwood forms so gradually within it across many decades, that the wood was always costly and always treasured, carried west along the long trade roads to perfume and to heal. In the apothecary, the fragrant wood and its cool oil were kept behind the lock and prized as a calmer and a cooler. A paste of the ground wood was smoothed upon the hot brow of the feverish, and upon the skin troubled by heat and rash, for the sandalwood was thought, almost alone among these warm, fragrant treasures, to cool rather than to warm, to quiet a burning body and a burning mind alike. A little of the cool oil, or a few fragrant shavings warmed gently, was breathed in to calm a restless and overwrought spirit, and to ease the wakeful toward a quiet sleep. The quiet thing to notice is that deep, cool, creamy calm of the sandalwood's scent, so gentle and so steadying, the very fragrance that has perfumed the quiet temples and the still meditations of the East for thousands of years, so that to breathe it even now is to feel something in the chest grow slower and softer and more at peace, as though the calm of all those quiet ancient rooms had been gathered into the heart of one slow, growing, fragrant tree. Let us close the 88th drawer and reach for the 89th. The 89th drawer holds the snow camphor of Borneo, the rarest and purest of all the camphors, gathered in small white crystals from the heart of a single kind of giant tree. We met the common camphor on a lower shelf, the cool white crystal drawn by fire, and still from the wood of the camphor laurel. But here on the highest shelf lies its rarer and more precious cousin, the natural camphor that forms, all of its own accord, in small white crystals deep within the heart of certain giant trees of the wet forests of one great eastern island, found only when such a tree is felled and split open, and never in any great amount, so that this true crystal camphor was in the old days far dearer than gold and treasured above the common kind beyond all reckoning. Its scent is the same clean, cold, penetrating breath as the common camphor, but purer and finer, and the crystals themselves are clear and white as small chips of winter ice. In the apothecary, the snow camphor was kept tightly stoppered behind the lock and used by the smallest grain for the gravest needs. A tiny amount, dissolved in oil, was rubbed upon the chest of one whose breath had grown most dangerously tight and laboring, and a trace of it was given with great care as a powerful reviver of the fainting and the failing, to rouse the spirits of one sunk almost beyond reach, for its cold, clean strength was thought to reach and wake the very inmost life. The quiet thing to notice is how the rarest and purest things were so often, in the old cabinet, simply finer forms of humbler ones met lower down, the snow, camphor and the common camphor, the true cinnamon and the cassia, the wild saffron and the marigold, as though the whole great cabinet were arranged to show, drawer by drawer, the long quiet ladder that climbs from the common and the cheap by small fine degrees, all the way up to the rare and the precious, each higher thing a purer echo of something kindly and familiar far below. Let us close the 89th drawer and open the 90th. The 90th drawer holds the dragon's blood, the dark red resin whose fearsome name hides only the deep red sap of certain far trees. It is the deep, dark, blood-red resin gathered from the fruit or the wounded bark of certain trees and palms of the far eastern isles and a few lonely islands of the warm western sea. A resin so startlingly red that the old peoples, struggling to name so strange a thing, gave it the fearsome name of dragon's blood and told wild tales of how it was the gore of dragons spilled in some ancient battle, when it is, in plain truth, only the deep red sap of a tree. It has almost no scent at all, for it was prized not for fragrance but for that astonishing color and for its drawing and healing power. In the apothecary, the dark red resin was kept behind the lock and used both as a medicine and as a brilliant red dye for varnishes and for the marking of fine things. A little of the powdered resin was smoothed upon a cut or a slow, healing wound and a bleeding sore, for it was thought to draw the wound tight, to stay the bleeding, and to quicken the closing of the flesh. And the same red powder was used as a wash for the loose and bleeding gum to draw it firm. The quiet thing to notice is how the old peoples, meeting a thing so strange that they could not explain it, reached so readily for a story of dragons and of ancient bloodshed to make sense of a small red lump of tree. Sap, a reminder that for most of the long history of this cabinet, every drawer held not only a medicine but also a mystery, and that where the true reason of a thing was not yet known, the old healers filled the gap with a tale, and used the medicine all the same, and were very often helped by it. Let us close the 90th drawer and reach for the 91st. The 91st drawer holds the bdellium, the fragrant desert gum, named in the very oldest of all the writings, a humbler cousin of the myrrh. It is the pale, fragrant, semi-clear gum, resin that weeps from the wounded bark of certain low thorny trees of the hot, dry lands of the south and the east, a near cousin of the myrrh, gathered into pale or reddish lumps and tears that carry a warm, sweet, balsamic scent, gentler and less bitter than the dark myrrh, and named, alongside gold and the precious stone, in the very oldest of all the sacred writings of the old world, so that it carries a great weight of years and of reverence in its very name. In the apothecary, the fragrant gum was kept behind the lock and used much as the myrrh, but where a gentler and sweeter resin was wanted. A little of the gum, dissolved in warm wine, was given to ease a griping gut and to steady a troubled spirit, and a wash of it was used upon slow healing sores, and a softening poultice laid upon hard swellings to draw them down. The fragrant gum was burned, too, as a sweet cleansing smoke for the close and heavy room. The quiet thing to notice is the great antiquity folded into so humble a lump of gum, for it is named in writings so old that the cities of their writing are long since fallen into dust, and yet here it lies in the drawer, the very same fragrant desert gum, weeping still from the very same kind of thorny tree, in the very same hot southern sands, a small unbroken thread of fragrance running back, unbroken, into the very dawn of the written word. Let us close the 91st drawer and open the 92nd. The 92nd drawer holds the galbanum, the green and pungent gum of the giant fennel of Persia, sharp as a cut green stem. It is the soft, gummy, fragrant resin that flows from the cut root and stem of a tall, giant fennel of the dry highlands of Persia, gathered into a soft brownish, green gum that gives up a strong, sharp, green, pungent scent, like the smell of a freshly snapped green stem, but far stronger and more lasting, bracing and a little harsh, quite unlike the sweet, warm resins beside it. It was named, like the frankincense and the myrrh, among the sweet spices of the oldest sacred writings, where it was burned in the holy incense, its sharp green note thought to anchor and to fix the sweeter fragrances around it. In the apothecary, the green pungent gum was kept behind the lock and used for the chest and for the skin. A little of the gum, dissolved in warm wine, was given to ease a tight and stubborn chest and a clogged and laboring breath, for its sharp green vapor was thought to cut through and loosen the heavy congestion. A softening plaster of the gum was laid upon hard and stubborn swellings to draw them down and bring them to a head. The fragrant gum was burned with the sweeter resins as a cleansing smoke. The quiet thing to notice is how the old perfumers and incense makers had learned, across long ages, that a sweet fragrance alone soon cloys and fades, and that a sharp green note like the galbanum, harsh and bracing on its own, woven in among the sweet resins, somehow holds them and steadies them, and makes the whole far deeper and far more lasting, a small old wisdom that the sharp and the bitter, rightly placed, can make the sweet things around them sweeter still. Let us close the 92nd drawer and reach for the 93rd. The 93rd drawer holds the opopanax, the sweet myrrh, the warm balsamic gum that smells of honey and of warm dark earth. It is the fragrant gum, resin gathered from the wounded root of a tall plant of the warm, dry lands of the eastern Mediterranean and beyond. A gum so close in its warmth and its balsamic depth to the myrrh that it was long called the sweet myrrh, yet softer and sweeter and rounder than the true dark mirror, with a warm scent of honey and of vanilla and of warm dark earth woven through the balsam. It came west along the warm trade roads and was kept among the treasures of the locked cabinet, prized as a sweet perfume and a warming medicine alike. In the apothecary, the fragrant gum was kept behind the lock and used much as the other sweet resins. A little of the gum, dissolved in warm wine, was given to steady a troubled spirit and to ease a griping gut, and the same gum, burned upon hot coals, gave a deep warm sweet smoke to cleanse and perfume a close and heavy room, and to quiet a restless and wakeful mind. A softening poultice of the gum was laid upon stubborn swellings. The quiet thing to notice is how many sweet warm balsamic resins crowd these highest shelves, the myrrh and the storax and the benzoin and the labdanum, and now the sweet myrrh, each one weeping from its own kind of far tree, each one carrying its own particular shade of that deep, warm, honeyed sweetness, so that to open these drawers one after another is to walk through a whole gallery of warm, dark fragrances, each so like, and yet each so subtly its own. A connoisseur's quiet collection of the sweetest gums the whole wide world had to give. Let us close the 93rd drawer and open the 94th. The 94th drawer is very nearly empty, for it holds the silphium, the lost spice, the one treasure of the cabinet that the world used up entirely and can never have again. It holds, at the very most, a few small dark fragments, or perhaps only the faded label and the memory, for the silphium was a spice and a medicine of the old world so prized and so beloved that the ancient peoples gathered it, and gathered it from its single narrow strip of dry coast in the warm south until, somewhere in the early centuries of the old world, the very last plant was pulled, and the silphium passed out of the world entirely and forever, the one and only treasure of this whole great cabinet that no amount of gold and no length of road can ever bring back. It was a giant fennel, like plant whose fragrant gum, resin was so valued that it was weighed against silver and stamped upon the coins of the city that grew rich upon it, used as a savor for the finest food and as a medicine for the troubled belly and the cough, and a great many quiet women's complaints besides. In the apothecary of the old world, it was a treasure of the highest shelf, and in every later apothecary, it was only a sorrowing memory, a thing the old books praised that no living healer would ever smell. The quiet thing to notice, here in this almost empty drawer, is the gentle warning it holds for all the other drawers around it, for the silphium was once as common upon the highest shelf as the saffron and the cinnamon, and the people of its day could no more imagine a world without it than we could, and yet by taking and never once leaving enough to grow again, they used it utterly away, so that this small empty drawer remembers, more plainly than any full one, that even the dearest treasures of the earth are not without an end, and must be gathered, if they are to last, with a gentle and a sparing hand. Let us close that almost empty drawer very softly, and open the 95th. The 95th drawer holds the asarabaca, the wild nard of the cool northern woods, the West's own small and fragrant answer to the costly spikenard of the East. It is the small, kidney-shaped, dark green leaf and the slender fragrant root of a low creeping plant of the cool shaded woods of the cooler lands, hiding its small dark hooded flowers beneath its leaves close down upon the leaf mood of the forest floor. The root, dug and dried, gives up a warm, spicy, peppery, faintly camphorous scent. And the old herbalists, finding in it a fragrance that recalled, however faintly, the costly spikenard of the far high mountains of the east, called it the wild nard of their own near woods, a small homely treasure for those who could never reach the true and distant kind. In the apothecary, the dried root and leaf were kept on the higher shelf and used carefully, for it was a strong medicine. A little of the dried root, taken in small careful measure, was given to clear a heavy and stuffed head, and to bring up a slow flame from the chest, and a snuff of the powdered leaf was drawn up the nose to clear a clogged and aching head, a sharp and ancient remedy for the dull megrim and the heavy cold in the head. Like many of the stronger things, it was given only in small and knowing doses by an experienced hand. The quiet thing to notice is how the old healers of the cool northern woods, longing for the costly fragrant treasures of the far east that they could so rarely afford, went searching through their own near forests and their own cold leaf mood, and found there, hiding beneath its small dark leaves, a humble creeping plant whose fragrant root recalled, just a little, the great spikenard of the mountains, and so gave their own woods a small and homely share of the perfume of the world. Let us close the 95th drawer and open the 96th. The 96th drawer holds the purging cassia, the long dark pod of the golden flowered tree, whose sweet dark pulp was the gentlest of the strong loosening medicines. It is the long, hard, dark, cylindrical pod of a beautiful tropical tree of the warm lands of the east and the south, a tree that hangs itself all over in its season, with long drooping chains of bright golden flowers so lovely that it is grown for its beauty alone, and that sets after the flowers these long dark woody pods, each divided within into many small cells, each cell holding a seed wrapped in a soft, dark, sweet, sticky pulp that is the medicine. The pulp is sweetish and a little sharp, with a faint dark fruity scent. It came west along the warm trade roads, and was kept among the treasures of the cabinet, prized as one of the kindest of all the medicines that loosen the bound and sluggish belly. In the apothecary, the dark sweet pulp, scraped from the pods, was kept behind the lock and given, dissolved in a little warm water or milk, as a gentle and a kindly loosener, mild enough to be given to children, and to the old and frail, and to women with child, where the fierce and griping purgers of the cabinet would have been far too cruel. A sweet dark draught rather than a dreaded dose. The quiet thing to notice is the lovely golden beauty of the tree that gives so humble a medicine, for the same branches that hang heavy in their season, with long shining chains of bright golden bloom, a sight to stop a traveller in his tracks, set afterward these plain dark pods, whose sweet quiet pulp eased, very gently, the most ordinary and unglamorous of the body's troubles, the beauty above and the kindness below growing on the one same tree. Let us close the 96th drawer and open the 97th. The 97th drawer holds the lesser galangal, the small fine fierce root that the most careful cooks, and the most knowing healers prized above its larger and milder cousin. We met the greater galangal far below, that warm piney root so beloved of the old herbals, but here upon a high shelf lies its smaller and fiercer kin, the lesser galangal, a small reddish, brown root of the warm wet lands of the far east, stronger and sharper and more pungent than the greater kind, with a fierce warming heat and a deep aromatic scent that the most careful cooks and the most knowing healers prized for the very smallness and fineness of it, since a little of the lesser root would do the work of much of the greater. It came west along the long sea roads and was kept, being finer and dearer, upon the higher shelf. In the apothecary, the small fierce root was used as a strong warming medicine for the coldest and most stubborn troubles of the belly and the chest. A little of the powdered root, taken in warm wine, was given to warm a stomach grown cold and dead to its food, to ease a deep griping wind, and to bring the blood up warm in a body chilled past the help of gentler things, and a little held in the mouth warmed, and eased a cold sore throat. The quiet thing to notice is how, again and again in the higher reaches of this cabinet, we meet the small fine fierce cousin of some humbler thing met lower down, the lesser galangal beside the greater, the snow camphor beside the common, as though the whole long climb of the drawers were teaching, very patiently, that the rarest and the finest things are very often not different in kind from the common ones at all, but only more concentrated, more refined, more potent, the same warm gift distilled down to its small and fiery heart. Let us close the 97th drawer and open the 98th, for now we come to the great compound medicines, the blendings of many spices into one. The 98th drawer does not hold a single spice at all, but a small dark jar of the mithridatum, the ancient compound electuary said to have been devised by a fearful old king against every poison and every ill. It is a thick, dark, sweet, fragrant paste, an electuary, made by grinding together a great many of the spices and gums and roots of this whole cabinet, dozens of them at the least, and binding them with honey into a single dark medicine. And the old story tells that it was first devised, in the dim early centuries, by a fearful king of a warm eastern land, who, dreading death by poison above all things, set his physicians to compound a single medicine of every healing thing they knew, and took a little of it every day of his long and frightened life to guard himself against all harm. The scent of the finished paste is deep and warm and complex beyond telling, for it holds within it a little of the cinnamon and the saffron and the myrrh and the spikenard and the long pepper and a great many more, all woven into one dark fragrant whole. In the apothecary, the dark paste was kept behind the lock in a small jar, costly to make and dearly sold, and a little of it, the size of a bean, was given dissolved in warm wine as a great restorative and a guard against all manner of ills, to revive the failing, to steady the troubled, to warm the chilled, and, the old faith held, to fortify the body against the bad airs and the creeping poisons of a fearful world. The quiet thing to notice is the deep old longing that lies behind so strange a medicine, the wish of a frightened man, and of all the frightened men and women who took it after him for 2,000 years, to find some single thing that might guard them against everything at once, every poison and every plague and every nameless fear, so that this dark sweet paste of 100 spices was, beneath its medicine, a kind of comfort against the great fear itself, the fear of the harm that might come from anywhere at all. Let us close the 98th drawer and open the 99th, the grandest of them all. The 99th drawer holds a small sealed jar of the theriac of Venice, the greatest and most famous compound medicine of the whole old world, the king of all the electuaries, made of more spices than any one cabinet could hold alone. It is the very grandest of all the dark, fragrant pastes, the theriac, the treacle of the old apothecaries, a thick, dark electuary made by grinding and blending together a vast number of the spices and gums and roots and other things of the whole cabinet, sometimes 60 and 70 and more, including a measure of the flesh of the viper, all bound with a great deal of honey and aged, the best of it, for years before it was thought fit to use. The most famous and most trusted of all was made in the great trading city of Venice, with much ceremony and under the watchful eyes of the city's own physicians. The ingredients laid out in public, so that all might see that nothing was stinted. And the finished theriac of Venice was carried from there across the whole of the old world, and sold at a princely price as the surest medicine in all the earth. The scent of it is deep and dark, and almost dizzyingly complex, the gathered fragrance of half this cabinet folded into one. In the apothecary, the sealed jar of true Venetian theriac was the proudest possession of the whole place, kept behind the lock, and a little of it, the size of a bean, was given dissolved in warm wine for the very gravest needs, to revive the dying, to steady the body against plague and poison, to ease the deepest pains, and to bring a little warmth and hope to those for whom nothing else was left to try. The quiet thing to notice is that this single dark medicine was, in a way, the whole cabinet gathered into one drawer, for it held within it a little of nearly everything we have opened tonight: the cinnamon and the saffron, the myrrh and the spikenard, the long pepper and the galangal and the costus and the gums of the far deserts, all ground patiently together into one dark sweet paste, so that to take a single bean of the theriac was, in some sense, to take a little of the whole long history of the spice cabinet at once, the gathered wisdom and the gathered fragrance of 1,000 years and 10,000 miles, all dissolved in one warm and hopeful cup. Let us close the 99th drawer very gently, for we come now to the last drawer of all. The 100th drawer holds no rare and costly treasure at all, but only the apothecary's own quiet night cup, the small simple blend the old healer made each evening for himself, of a little cardamom and a little rose and the smallest pinch of saffron in warm milk, the gentlest remedy of the whole long cabinet. For after all the climbing, after the golden threads and the grey lumps from the sea, and the dark resins of the far deserts, and the great compound treacles worth a fortune by the bean, the old apothecary, when his day's long work was done, and the lamp burned low, and the shutters were drawn against the dark, would reach not to the highest shelf, but to a few of the kindly homely drawers, and take down a little of the warm fragrant cardamom, and a few of the dried buds, or a drop of the water of the rose, and the very smallest pinch of the precious saffron, no more than 3 or 4 threads, and he would warm a little milk by the last of the fire, and stir these gentle things into it, until the cup turned a soft pale gold, and gave up a scent of warm milk, and sweet rose and bright cardamom, and the faint honeyed depth of the saffron, and he would sit with the warm cup in both his hands in the quiet of the closing day. It was no grand medicine, and it cured no great disease, and yet of all the things in the whole cabinet, it was perhaps the one he loved the best, for it warmed the chilled body, and settled the tired belly, and quieted the worried mind, and drew him, slowly and kindly, down toward his rest. The quiet thing to notice, here at the very last drawer of all, is that the wisest keeper of all these 100 treasures, who knew the worth of every golden thread and every grey lump and every dark and precious resin, chose for his own evening comfort not the rarest things upon the highest shelf, but only a few warm, kindly spices stirred into a cup of milk, as though the whole long climb of the cabinet had taught him, in the end, that the dearest treasures and the gentlest comforts are very often not the same thing at all, and that what soothes a tired soul at the close of a long day need be neither rare nor costly, but only warm and sweet and given with a little care. And there it is. We have opened all 100 of the small wooden drawers, from the plain salt and the common pepper nearest the floor, up through the warm brown seeds of the kitchen shelf, and the seeds and roots the caravans carried, and the peppery treasures of the eastern coast, and the costly barks and the fragrant rinds, and the drawers of far gardens, and up at last behind the small brass lock to the golden threads and the grey lumps from the sea, and the dark resins of the desert roads, and the great compound treacles of the famous cities, and down again, gently, to the warm milk cup of the apothecary's own quiet night. 100 small drawers, 100 quiet medicines, 100 long roads, all gathered together in one tall dark cabinet of waxed old oak in one small still room. There is no need to hold any of it in your mind. Let the names of the spices drift away now, like the last of a fragrant smoke rising and thinning in the dim air above a cooling lamp. The salt and the mustard and the common pepper, the fennel and the anise and the warm dark cumin, the cardamom and the clove and the long travelled nutmeg, the pale fine cinnamon and the golden saffron and the grey gift of the sea. They have all been opened and breathed and closed again, and they are all safely back in their small drawers now, in the dark, where they will keep until they are needed. The lamp is very low now. The little room is warm, and it smells, very faintly, of 100 far places at once, of southern hillsides and eastern forests and desert sands and the cold open sea, all of them gathered into this one quiet evening. The great cabinet stands dark and still against the wall, all its 100 small drawers shut, holding all its 100 quiet treasures safe and asleep until the morning. And you have no climbing left to do, and no drawers left to open, and nothing at all that the night asks of you now. So let the warmth of the imagined cup settle into your hands, and let the soft scent of warm milk and rose and cardamom and a thread of saffron settle around you in the dark, and let your breathing grow as slow and as even as the soft slide of a closing drawer. If sleep has not yet come, you need not reach for it. Only lie still in the warm, dim room of your own resting, and let the long, quiet shelves of the cabinet stand watch over you in the dark, each small drawer shut, each small treasure safe, the whole gentle weight of 1,000 years of patient healing keeping its calm and fragrant vigil over your rest. Rest now. The drawers are all closed. The lamp is going out, and there is nothing left to do tonight but sleep.